The CEO panics without an Arabic translator until the janitor's daughter takes over the meeting and uncovers the millionaire's fiancé's scams. Before we jump in, this story reached people in over 50 countries last week. Let's see how far it goes today. The December wind cut through downtown Chicago like a knife, carrying with it the bitter promise of the worst winter in decades. Marcus Wellington pulled his cashmere coat tighter as he stepped out of his black Mercedes, the warmth of the heated seats already a distant memory. At 52, he had built an empire worth $3 billion. But tonight, all that money couldn't warm the ice that had settled in his chest 3 years ago. "Mr. Wellington, the reservation is confirmed for 7:30, James Fletcher, his assistant, said as he closed the car door behind them. "The board members are already inside." Marcus nodded absently, his steel-grey eyes scanning the sidewalk ahead. The annual Christmas dinner with his investors had become a ritual he dreaded, but business demanded these performances. He was about to respond to James when something made him stop dead in his tracks. Huddled against the brick wall of the alley beside Romano's restaurant, a small figure sat trembling in the bitter cold, a little girl, no more than 7 years old, wearing a threadbare pink jacket that had seen better years. Her dark hair hung in tangles around a face that should have been rosy with childhood health, but instead was pale and gaunt. She clutched a raggedy stuffed rabbit to her chest, and Marcus could see her lips moving silently, as if she were telling the toy a secret. "Sir," James noticed his boss had stopped walking. "Is everything all right?" But Marcus wasn't listening. Something about the child pulled at him with a force he couldn't explain. Maybe it was the way she held her stuffed animal, or the determined set of her small shoulders despite the cold. Whatever it was, his feet were moving toward her before his mind could catch up. "Sweetheart," Marcus said softly, crouching down so he was at eye level with the girl. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The child looked up, and Marcus felt his breath catch. Her eyes were the deepest brown he'd ever seen, filled with an intelligence that seemed far too old for her young face. Those eyes reminded him of someone, though he couldn't quite place who. "I'm waiting," she said simply, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Waiting for what, honey?" "For my mama to come back." The words were spoken with such quiet conviction that Marcus felt his heart squeeze painfully. She said she'd be right back, but that was. The little girl paused, her brow furrowing as she tried to count. That was when the sun was up high. Now it's dark. Marcus glanced at his Rolex. It was nearly 7:15 in the evening. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily Thompson." She pulled her stuffed rabbit closer. "This is Mr. Whiskers. He's not scared of the dark, so I'm not scared either." "That's very brave of both of you." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. "Lily, I don't think your mama is coming back tonight. Do you have somewhere warm to go?" Lily's lower lip trembled slightly, but she lifted her chin with remarkable courage. "Aunt Betty said I could sleep in the alley if I was quiet. She has friends over and they don't like kids." The casual way she said it hit Marcus like a physical blow. This child was living in conditions no human being should endure, let alone a 7-year-old. He thought of his own home, with its 23 rooms and 7 fireplaces, all empty and echoing with memories. "Mr. Wellington," James whispered urgently. "The dinner." Marcus held up a hand without taking his eyes off Lily. "Tell me, Lily, when was the last time you had something to eat?" She considered this seriously. "Yesterday, I think. Aunt Betty made mac and cheese, but it was the kind from the box, and she forgot to add milk, so it was kind of crunchy." That was it. Marcus stood up, his decision made with the swift certainty that had built his business empire. "Lily Thompson." "Odi," he said, extending his hand toward her. "Would you like to have dinner with me and my friends tonight? Real dinner, with warm food and hot chocolate?" Lily stared at his outstretched hand as if it might disappear if she looked away. "You really mean it?" "I never say anything I don't mean. But I'm all dirty. And my clothes aren't fancy like yours." Marcus's throat tightened. "You're perfect exactly as you are. What do you say? Will you join us?" For a moment, Lily didn't move. Then, slowly, she reached out and placed her small, cold hand in his large, warm one. The moment their skin touched, Marcus felt something he thought was lost forever, a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with quarterly profits or market shares. "Okay," Lily whispered, "but can Mr. Whiskers come too?" "Mr. Whiskers is absolutely invited." As Marcus led Lily toward the restaurant, James falling into step behind them with obvious bewilderment, the little girl looked up at him with those impossibly deep brown eyes. "Mr. Marcus." "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you an angel?" "Aunt Betty says angels sometimes look like regular people." Marcus stopped walking for a moment, overwhelmed by emotions he thought he'd buried forever. "No, Lily. I'm just a man who needed to meet a very brave little girl tonight." What Marcus couldn't know, as they walked through the golden light spilling from Romano's windows, was that this single act of kindness would unravel secrets buried for years, threaten everything he thought he knew about his past, and ultimately lead to a choice that would define the rest of his life. The maitre d' at Romano's had seen many things in his 30 years of service, but a billionaire CEO walking in with a homeless child was definitely a first. The warm air of Romano's restaurant enveloped them like a velvet blanket as Marcus guided Lily through the mahogany doors. The contrast from the bitter December cold was so stark that Lily gasped, her small body visibly relaxing for the first time since Marcus had found her. "Good evening, Mr. Wellington," the maitre d', Giuseppe Romano, greeted them with practiced elegance before his eyes fell on Lily. Giuseppe's professional composure faltered for just a moment, but years of serving Chicago's elite had taught him to roll with the unexpected. "Your usual table is ready, sir." "Actually, Giuseppe, I'll need a child's menu as well tonight." Marcus's hand rested protectively on Lily's shoulder, "and perhaps a warm cup of hot chocolate to start." "Of course, sir. Right away." As they were led toward the private dining room where Marcus's business dinner was scheduled, Lily's eyes grew wide with wonder. She had never seen anything like Romano's, with its crystal chandeliers casting rainbows across cream-colored walls, adorned with original oil paintings. The thick carpet beneath her worn sneakers felt softer than any bed she'd ever known. "It's like a palace," she whispered to Mr. Whiskers, holding her stuffed rabbit so he could see too. The private dining room fell silent as Marcus entered with Lily. 5 of Chicago's most powerful investors sat around a table set with fine china and sterling silver, their faces displaying varying degrees of shock and confusion. These were men who controlled billions in assets, who could buy and sell companies on a whim, and they were utterly unprepared for this moment. "Gentlemen," Marcus said calmly, pulling out a chair for Lily right beside his own seat at the head of the table. "I'd like you to meet Miss Lily Thompson. She'll be joining us for dinner tonight." Robert Ashford, a stern man in his 60s who controlled half the real estate in downtown Chicago, was the first to find his voice. "Marcus, what exactly is going on here?" "We're having dinner, Robert. Just as planned." Marcus's tone carried that unmistakable edge that had made him one of the youngest billionaires in America. "Lily, these are my business associates. Gentlemen, Lily is my guest, and I expect her to be treated with the same respect you'd show any other dinner companion." Lily climbed onto her chair, which was so large her feet dangled several inches from the floor. She placed Mr. Whiskers carefully on the table beside her plate, arranging his small paws just so. "Hello," she said politely, her voice small but clear. "Thank you for letting me eat with you. I promise I'll use my best manners." The simple grace of her words hit the room like a thunderbolt. These men, accustomed to corporate warfare and ruthless negotiations, found themselves face to face with pure, unguarded innocence. William Chen, Marcus's longtime friend, and the closest thing he had to a confidant, leaned forward slightly. "It's very nice to meet you, Lily. That's a beautiful rabbit you have there." Lily's face lit up with the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her. "His name is Mr. Whiskers. He's been my best friend for a really long time. My mama gave him to me when I was little, not just little like I am now." The waiter appeared with a steaming cup of hot chocolate, topped with whipped cream and a cherry, setting it carefully in front of Lily. Her eyes went wide with disbelief. "Is that really for me?" she asked Marcus, her voice filled with wonder. "All yours, sweetheart." Lily wrapped her small hands around the warm mug and took a tiny, careful sip. The expression of pure bliss that crossed her face was something none of the men at that table would ever forget. It was as if she were tasting happiness itself for the first time. "It's the best thing I ever had in my whole life," she announced solemnly, then took another reverent sip. As the evening progressed, something magical happened in that dining room. The initial shock and discomfort of the businessmen began to melt away, replaced by something none of them had felt in years: genuine human connection. Lily's innocent questions about their work, about her amazement at the multiple courses that kept arriving, and her careful attention to her table manners touched something deep in these hardened corporate warriors. "Mr. William," Lily said during the main course, having carefully cut her chicken into tiny, manageable pieces, "do you have little girls at home?" William's expression softened. "I do, Lily. 2 daughters, but they're grown up now. They're both doctors." "That's really important work," Lily said seriously. "When I grow up, I want to help people too. Maybe I could be a teacher or work at the place where they give food to hungry people." The room fell quiet. Here was a child who had nothing, who had been abandoned and neglected, and her greatest dream was to help others. Marcus watched it all unfold with growing amazement. He had brought Lily here on pure instinct, driven by an inexplicable need to protect her. But as the evening wore on, he realized she was the one changing everyone else. Her presence had transformed a sterile business dinner into something real and meaningful. "Lily," Robert Ashford said quietly, his gruff voice gentler than anyone had ever heard it, "tell me about your family." Lily's small hand found Marcus's larger one under the table. "Well, my mama had to go away for a while, but she's coming back. And I live with Aunt Betty, but she's not really my aunt. She just lets me stay there sometimes." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't think she likes me very much." The men exchanged glances over her head, each one thinking the same thing. This child was essentially alone in the world. "But," Lily continued, her voice brightening as she looked up at Marcus, "I think maybe Mr. Marcus might be my guardian angel. Aunt Betty always said that when you really need help, sometimes angels come disguised as regular people." Marcus felt his throat tighten. 3 years ago, he had lost everything that mattered to him. He had convinced himself that he was beyond redemption, that his heart had frozen solid in his chest. But this little girl, with her unwavering faith and boundless capacity for hope, was melting that ice, one smile at a time. As dessert was served, a chocolate mousse that made Lily gasp with delight, Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives forever. But he had no idea that in a few short hours, a phone call would reveal a truth so shocking it would shake the very foundation of everything he thought he knew about his past, and about the little girl who had wandered into his life on the coldest night of the year. The grandfather clock in Romano's lobby chimed 10:30 as the dinner finally wound down. Lily had fallen asleep in her chair, her small head resting against Marcus's arm. Mr. Whiskers clutched protectively in her arms. The sight of the exhausted child touched something primal in every man at that table. "Marcus," William Chen said quietly, so as not to wake Lily, "what's your plan here? You can't just take a child home without proper procedures." Marcus looked down at Lily's peaceful face, noting the dark circles under her eyes and the way she instinctively curled toward him for warmth and protection. "I know exactly what I'm doing, William. For the first time in 3 years, I know exactly what I'm doing." Robert Ashford, who had been unusually quiet since Lily's comment about helping hungry people, cleared his throat. "That Aunt Betty she mentioned, someone needs to check on that situation. A child living in an alley." He trailed off, his own memories of growing up in poverty clearly surfacing. "Already handled," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. "James made some calls during dinner. Betty Morrison isn't Lily's legal guardian. She's just been letting the child stay there sporadically. Lily's mother, Sarah Thompson, has been missing for 6 weeks. The authorities haven't been notified because there's no one to report it. The men sat in stunned silence. They had just spent 3 hours with a child who had been essentially abandoned, and she had shown more grace and gratitude than most adults they knew. Marcus gently scooped Lily into his arms, careful not to wake her. She stirred slightly, murmuring something about chocolate mousse before settling back into sleep. "Gentlemen, we'll continue our discussion about the Morrison project tomorrow. Tonight, I have more important matters to attend to." As Marcus carried Lily toward the exit, James appeared with a concerned expression. "Sir, we have a problem. Mrs. Morrison, Lily's Aunt Betty, she's gone. Neighbors say she packed up and left about an hour ago. Apparently, she owed money to some dangerous people." Marcus felt his jaw clench. "So she just abandoned Lily completely." "It appears so, sir, but there's more." James lowered his voice. "I had our private investigator do a preliminary background check on Sarah Thompson, Lily's mother. Sir, you need to see this." They settled into the back of Marcus's Mercedes, Lily still sleeping peacefully across his lap. James handed him a manila folder with trembling hands. "Sir, Sarah Thompson's maiden name was Sarah Wilson. She worked as a pediatric nurse at Chicago General Hospital until 7 years ago, when she suddenly quit and disappeared." Marcus opened the folder, and his world shifted on its axis. The photograph paperclip to the first page showed a young woman with dark hair and the deepest brown eyes he'd ever seen. Eyes identical to Lily's. But it wasn't just the resemblance that made his breath catch. He knew this woman. "Dear God," Marcus whispered, his hands shaking as he stared at the photo. "Sarah Wilson. I remember her." 8 years ago, Marcus had been in a near-fatal car accident. He'd spent weeks in Chicago General's intensive care unit, drifting in and out of consciousness. During his recovery, there had been a night nurse who had sat with him during his worst moments. When the pain medications weren't enough and the nightmares from the accident consumed him, Sarah Wilson had been more than a nurse. She had been his lifeline. Her gentle voice had talked him through panic attacks. Her steady presence had kept him grounded when he thought he was losing his mind. They had talked for hours during those long nights when sleep wouldn't come. And then, when he was well enough to leave the hospital, he had tried to find her to thank her properly. But she had quit just days before his discharge, leaving no forwarding address. "James," Marcus said, his voice barely controlled, "what else does the report say?" "Drill. Sarah Thompson gave birth to a daughter 8 years ago. The father is listed as unknown on the birth certificate." Marcus did the math quickly. Lily was 7 years old. Sarah had quit her job 7 years ago. The timing was... "Sir, there's more." I took the liberty of having the investigator dig deeper into Miss Thompson's disappearance. It wasn't random. 3 men were seen forcing her into a car 6 weeks ago. Street cameras caught part of the license plate, but the investigation stalled because no one reported her missing. Lily stirred in Marcus's arms, her small hand reaching up to touch his face. "Mr. Marcus," she whispered sleepily, "are we going home?" Home. The word hit him like a physical blow. When was the last time his house had felt like a home? When was the last time anyone had waited for him there? "Yes, sweetheart, we're going home." But even as he said the words, Marcus's mind was racing. The brown eyes, the timing, Sarah's sudden disappearance from the hospital right after Lily's birth. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? "James, I need you to contact Dr. Harrison at Chicago General immediately. I don't care what time it is. I need to know everything about Sarah Wilson's employment there 8 years ago. Sir, it's nearly 11 o'clock. Now, James." As they pulled into the circular drive of Marcus's Lakeshore Drive mansion, Lily woke fully and pressed her face to the window. "Is this really where you live?" she asked in wonder. "It is, and tonight it's where you live too." But as Marcus carried Lily up the steps to his front door, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to uncover a truth that would change everything. The little girl in his arms might be more than just a homeless child he'd rescued from the cold. She might be the daughter he never knew he had. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Wellington felt something he'd thought was lost forever: hope. As they stepped into the warmth of his home, neither of them could have imagined that in just 12 hours, a DNA test would confirm Marcus's growing suspicions, and a desperate phone call would reveal that Lily's mother was still alive and in terrible danger. The clock on the mantelpiece chimed 11 times. As Marcus carried his possible daughter toward a future neither of them could have imagined that morning. The Wellington mansion stood like a beacon against the December darkness, its windows glowing warmly as Marcus carried Lily through the grand foyer. She had awakened fully during the car ride, and now her eyes were wide with wonder as she took in the soaring ceiling, the marble staircase that curved like something from a fairy tale, and the chandelier that cast tiny rainbows across the walls. "Mr. Marcus," she whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "Do you live here all by yourself?" The innocent question hit harder than any board meeting confrontation ever had. "Yes, sweetheart, just me. But it's so big. Don't you get lonely?" Marcus paused on the first step of the staircase. "Out of the mouths of babes. Sometimes I do." Maria Santos, Marcus's housekeeper for the past 15 years, appeared at the top of the stairs. At 62, Maria had seen Marcus through his rise to power, his marriage, his devastating loss 3 years ago, and his subsequent retreat into isolation. But she had never seen him carry a child into their home. "Mr. Wellington," she said softly in her gentle Mexican accent, "I prepared the blue guest room as you requested." "Thank you, Maria. This is Lily. She'll be staying with us." Maria's experienced eyes took in everything: the child's worn clothes, her thin frame, the way she clung to both Marcus and her stuffed rabbit, and most importantly, the way Marcus held her with a tenderness Maria hadn't seen from him in years. "Welcome, Misha," Maria said warmly, extending her hand to Lily. "I'm Maria, and I help take care of this big house." Lily looked up at Marcus for permission before taking Maria's hand. "Thank you for letting me stay. I'll try to be very good and not make any messes." "No, oh, sweet child," Maria murmured, her heart breaking at the formal politeness of a 7-year-old who had clearly learned to make herself invisible to avoid trouble. The blue guest room had been transformed in the hour since Marcus's phone call. Maria had somehow found soft pink pajamas in Lily's size, had filled the room with extra pillows and blankets, and had even managed to locate a collection of children's books from somewhere in the mansion's many rooms. "This is all for me?" Lily asked, setting Mr. Whiskers carefully on the massive 4-poster bed. "All yours," Marcus confirmed, sitting on the edge of the bed beside her. "Lily, I want you to know something important. You're safe here. You don't have to worry about being good enough or quiet enough or small enough. You can just be yourself." Lily looked at him with those impossibly deep brown eyes, Sarah's eyes. But what if myself is too much trouble? The question revealed more about her young life than 1,000 caseworker reports could have. Marcus felt something fierce and protective surge through him, an emotion so powerful it took his breath away. "You could never be too much trouble, sweetheart. Never." As Maria helped Lily into her new pajamas and brushed out her tangled hair, Marcus stepped into the hallway to make phone calls that couldn't wait until morning. His first call was to Dr. Patricia Harrison at Chicago General Hospital. "Marcus, do you realize what time it is?" Dr. Harrison's voice was groggy but alert. "Patricia, I need you to pull Sarah Wilson's employment records from 8 years ago. She was a pediatric nurse in the ICU. Sarah Wilson." There was a pause as Dr. Harrison's medical mind shifted into gear. "My God, Marcus, you're talking about the Sarah Wilson who disappeared, the one who used to work nights in the ICU where you were a patient. You remember her?" "Of course I remember her. She was one of our best nurses. But more than that, Marcus, she was the one who sat with you during those terrible nights when you couldn't sleep. She talked you through the worst of your recovery." Marcus closed his eyes, memories flooding back. Sarah's gentle voice reading to him when the pain was too much to bear. her steady presence during panic attacks that left him gasping and terrified, the way she had somehow known exactly what to say to bring him back from the edge. "Patricia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Is there any chance? Could Sarah have been pregnant when she left?" And the silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Marcus thought the call had dropped. "Patricia, Marcus, she came to see me just before she quit. She was scared, confused. She said she had made a mistake but couldn't tell me what it was. And yes, now that you mention it, she did seem different, emotional in a way that wasn't like her." Marcus felt his world shift again. "I need you to do something for me. I need a discrete DNA test, and I need the results by tomorrow afternoon." "Marcus, what aren't you telling me?" "I found her daughter tonight, a 7-year-old girl named Lily, living in an alley because her mother disappeared 6 weeks ago." Another long silence. "Bring her in tomorrow morning. I'll handle it personally." Marcus's second call was to his security chief, David Mitchell. "David, I need round-the-clock protection on my home, starting immediately, and I need you to expand the search for Sarah Thompson. She didn't leave voluntarily. She was taken." "Understood, sir. How much should I tell the men about the situation?" "Everything. This isn't just about business anymore." When Marcus returned to Lily's room, he found her sitting up in the enormous bed, looking tiny against the mountain of pillows. She had changed into the pink pajamas, and with her hair brushed and her face clean, the resemblance to Sarah was even more striking. "Mr. Marcus," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart. Do you think my mama is okay? Sometimes I have bad dreams that she's scared and needs help." Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and took her small hand in his. "I think your mama loves you very much, and I think she would do anything to get back to you, and I want you to know that I'm going to do everything in my power to find her." "Promise?" "I promise." As Lily settled down to sleep, clutching Mr. Whiskers close, she looked up at Marcus with complete trust. "I'm glad I met you tonight. I think maybe you needed a friend as much as I did." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. "I think you're absolutely right." He was about to turn off the light when Lily spoke again, her voice already thick with sleep. "Mr. Marcus, when I was really little, my mama used to tell me stories about my daddy. She said he was brave and kind, and that he would love me very much if he could find me. Do you think he's still looking for me?" Marcus's breath caught in his throat. "I think any father would be lucky to have a daughter like you, Lily. Sweet dreams." As he closed the door softly behind him, Marcus realized that tomorrow's DNA test might just confirm what his heart already knew, and if it did, he would move heaven and earth to find Sarah and bring their family together. But first, he had to prepare for the possibility that he was about to become a father to a 7-year-old girl who had already stolen his heart completely. To 5, Marcus barely slept that night. He spent hours in his study, staring at Sarah's photograph and trying to piece together memories from 8 years ago. Every detail seemed crucial now. Every conversation, every moment of connection, every reason she might have had for disappearing so completely. At 6 in the morning, he found himself standing outside Lily's door, listening to her peaceful breathing. He had checked on her 3 times during the night, unable to shake the protective instinct that had taken hold of him so completely. The sound of small feet padding down the hallway made him turn. Lily emerged from her room, still in her pink pajamas, clutching Mr. Whiskers and looking slightly lost in the vastness of the mansion. "Good morning, sweetheart," Marcus said softly. "How did you sleep?" "Really good," Lily said, then paused. "Mr. Marcus, is it okay if I ask where the bathroom is? I didn't want to open any wrong doors." The careful politeness of her request broke his heart all over again. "Of course. Come on, I'll show you." As they walked down the hallway, Lily looked up at the family portraits lining the walls. Marcus had avoided this hallway for 3 years, but seeing it through Lily's eyes made him notice things he'd forgotten. "Who are all these people?" she asked, stopping in front of a large portrait of a young couple with a small boy. "That's my family from a long time ago," Marcus said, his voice carefully controlled. "My parents and me when I was about your age." Where are they now? They died when I was grown up, but I still miss them sometimes. Lily nodded solemnly. I miss my mama too, but I pretend she's watching me from wherever she is, so I don't feel so alone. Marcus felt his throat tighten. That's a very smart way to think about it. They continued past more portraits until they reached one that made Marcus stop abruptly. It was a family photo taken just 4 years ago. Marcus, with his wife Elizabeth, and their 3-year-old son David. They looked impossibly happy, completely unaware that within a year, a drunk driver would take both Elizabeth and David away forever. They look really happy, Lily said quietly, studying the photo. Is that your family too? Marcus struggled to find his voice. Yes, that was my family. What happened to them? The simple, direct question deserved an honest answer. They went to heaven 3 years ago. There was an accident. Lily reached up and took his hand, her small fingers warm and comforting. I'm sorry they had to go away, but I bet they're proud of you for taking care of me. The innocent wisdom of her words hit him like a physical blow. Here was a child who had every reason to be bitter and angry at the world, and instead she was comforting him. Downstairs, Maria was already preparing breakfast, and the smell of fresh coffee and pancakes filled the kitchen. When she saw Lily, her face lit up with genuine warmth. Buenos dias, mija. Are you hungry? Lily's eyes widened as she took in the spread Maria had prepared. Fluffy pancakes, fresh fruit, orange juice, and scrambled eggs. Is this all for breakfast? All for you, little one. You need to eat and grow strong. Murray, as Lily ate with the careful appreciation of someone who had never taken food for granted, Marcus's phone rang. James Fletcher's name appeared on the screen. Sir, I have updates on both situations, James said without preamble. The investigator found security footage from the night Sarah Thompson was taken. 3 men in a black SUV, but the license plate traces back to a shell company. We're digging deeper. And? There's more, sir. I spoke with neighbors in Sarah's building. She had been receiving threatening phone calls for weeks before she disappeared. Something about money owed by someone named Tommy Morrison. Marcus felt ice form in his veins. Morrison? As in Betty Morrison, Lily's fake aunt? It appears so, sir. Tommy Morrison was Betty's boyfriend. He borrowed money from some very dangerous people and disappeared. They thought Sarah might know where he was or where the money was hidden. Marcus watched Lily carefully cutting her pancakes into perfect squares, humming softly to herself, completely unaware that her mother might have been taken because of someone else's mistakes. Keep digging, James, and double the security detail. If these people are still looking for Tommy Morrison, they might come looking for Lily. After breakfast, Marcus explained to Lily that they needed to visit the hospital for a quick checkup. She accepted this with the same quiet compliance she showed toward everything, and an hour later they were sitting in Dr. Harrison's office. Lily, I'm going to take a tiny bit of your blood just to make sure you're healthy, Dr. Harrison explained gently. It won't hurt much. And then Mr. Marcus is going to take you somewhere fun while we wait for the results. Will it help find my mama? Lily asked, rolling up her sleeve. Marcus and Dr. Harrison exchanged glances. It might help us understand some important things, Marcus said carefully. The blood draw was quick, and Lily was brave throughout, only wincing slightly when the needle went in. Dr. Harrison promised to call with results by late afternoon. Where would you like to go while we wait? Marcus asked as they left the hospital. Lily thought seriously about this. Could we go to the library? I love books, but I haven't been able to read any new ones in a really long time. And the simplicity of her request touched him deeply. Here was a child who could have asked for toys or games or any number of expensive things, and she wanted books. The Chicago Public Library was nearly empty on a Thursday morning, and Lily's reaction to the children's section was pure magic. She ran her fingers along the spines of books with reverence, her eyes shining with possibilities. I can really pick any ones I want, she asked. As many as you can carry. For the next 2 hours, Marcus watched Lily lose herself in story after story. She read to him about brave princesses and talking animals, her voice growing more confident with each page. When she wasn't reading, she was carefully selecting books to take home, considering each choice with the gravity of someone making life-altering decisions. It was during this peaceful interlude that Marcus's phone rang with the call that would change everything. "Marcus, Doctor." Harrison's voice was tight with emotion. "The results are in. You need to sit down. Just tell me, Patricia. She's your daughter, Marcus. Lily is definitely your biological daughter." Marcus felt the world shift around him as he watched Lily sitting cross-legged on the library carpet, completely absorbed in a book about a little girl finding her way home. His daughter, the child he never knew existed, was his own flesh and blood. "There's more," Dr. Harrison continued. "I ran the blood work for other reasons too. Marcus, this child has been malnourished for months. Her vitamin levels are dangerously low, and there are signs of chronic stress that no 7-year-old should have. She's been through hell, and somehow she's still the sweetest child I've ever met." Marcus watched Lily turn a page, her small face serious with concentration, and felt something fundamental shift in his chest. This wasn't just about rescuing a homeless child anymore. This was about protecting his daughter, finding her mother, and somehow building the family he'd thought was lost forever. "Daddy!" Lily called out suddenly, and Marcus's heart stopped. But then he realized she was reading from her book, practicing the word as she sounded out the story. Soon, he thought, looking at the child who had unknowingly called him by the title he'd thought he'd never hear again. Very soon, that word would be meant for him. But first, he had to find Sarah and bring her home safely. His daughter deserved to have her mother back, and Marcus was going to move heaven and earth to make that happen. The drive home from the library was quiet, with Lily contentedly flipping through her stack of chosen books in the back seat. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his mind reeling from Dr. Harrison's confirmation. His daughter. 7 years of her life had passed without him knowing she existed. 7 years of her struggling while he had been building an empire that suddenly felt meaningless. "Mr. Marcus?" Lily's voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you sad about something?" Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Even at 7 years old, she was incredibly perceptive. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm just thinking about some very important things. Sometimes when I think too hard, my head hurts. Mama used to say that feelings are too big for thinking, and sometimes you just have to let them be big." The wisdom in her words hit him like a physical blow. Sarah had taught her that. Sarah, who was somewhere out there, possibly hurt, definitely scared, not knowing that their daughter was safe. Back at the mansion, Marcus found James waiting in his study with a thick folder and a grim expression. "Sir, we have a breakthrough, but it's not good news." Lily had settled in the living room with Maria, who was teaching her to braid friendship bracelets. The domestic scene was so normal, so right, that Marcus had to force himself to focus on James's words. "Tommy Morrison is dead," James said bluntly. "Found in the Chicago River 3 weeks ago. The men who took Sarah don't know that yet." Marcus felt his blood run cold, which means they're still holding her, waiting for information she doesn't have about money that no longer exists. "Where is she, James?" "We tracked the shell company to a warehouse district on the south side. David Mitchell's team is already conducting surveillance. But, sir, these aren't amateur thugs. Victor Kozlov's organization doesn't leave loose ends." Marcus had heard of Kozlov, a man who controlled much of Chicago's underground lending operations with an iron fist and no conscience. The fact that Sarah had become entangled in his web through no fault of her own made Marcus's protective instincts surge with dangerous intensity. "I want a rescue plan in place by tonight, sir. With respect, this requires law enforcement. We can't just—" "We can, and we will." Marcus's voice carried the steel that had built his empire. "That's my daughter in there, James, and her mother. I don't care what it costs or what it takes." James paused mid-sentence, staring at his boss. "Your daughter, sir." The DNA results came back. "Lily is mine." For a moment, James was speechless. Then his expression shifted to something Marcus had rarely seen from his efficient assistant: pure emotion. "My God, sir, she's been alone all this time and you never knew. Which is why we're going to fix this tonight." A burst of laughter from the living room drew both men's attention. Through the doorway, they could see Lily showing Maria her finished friendship bracelet, a simple thing made of pink and blue threads that she had woven with intense concentration. "Mr. Marcus!" Lily called out when she spotted him. "Look what I made! Maria taught me how, and she said I could make one for my mama when she comes home." Marcus walked over and knelt beside her chair. The bracelet was slightly uneven, the work of 7-year-old fingers, but it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "It's perfect, sweetheart. Do you really think so? I want it to be special for her. I want to give her something nice when I see her again." Looking into her trusting brown eyes, Marcus made a decision that went against every careful instinct he'd developed over the years. This child deserved to know the truth, or at least part of it. "Lily, I need to tell you something very important. Can you sit with me for a minute?" She nodded solemnly, clutching her bracelet. "You know how you've been staying with me and how I've been taking care of you?" "Yes, you're the nicest person I ever met." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Well, it turns out there's a very special reason why we found each other. Lily, I'm your daddy." For a long moment, Lily stared at him without speaking. Her small face went through a series of expressions: confusion, hope, disbelief, and finally a joy so pure it took Marcus's breath away. "You're my daddy? My real daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart, I'm your real daddy." Lily launched herself into his arms with such force that he nearly toppled backward. She buried her face in his neck, and he could feel her tiny body shaking. "I knew it," she whispered fiercely. "I knew you felt like family. That's why I wasn't scared with you." Marcus held her tightly, this miracle child he'd found and lost and found again. "I'm never going to let anything happen to you, Lily. Never. And we're going to find Mama and bring her home. We're going to find Mama and bring her home," he promised. As evening fell, Marcus tucked Lily into her bed, reading her 3 stories before she finally drifted off to sleep. She had insisted on keeping the friendship bracelet on her nightstand where she could see it, ready for the moment her mother returned. Downstairs, Marcus's security team was finalizing plans for an operation that would either reunite his family or destroy them all. The warehouse where Sarah was being held was heavily guarded, and Kozlov's men were known for their brutality. But as Marcus looked at the photo James had taken of Lily sleeping peacefully, her small hand still holding Mr. Whiskers, he knew he would face any danger to bring her mother home. What he didn't know was that at that very moment Sarah Thompson was staring out a grimy warehouse window at the Chicago skyline, wondering if her daughter was still alive, and praying to a God she wasn't sure was listening that somehow, somewhere, Lily was safe. The rescue would happen tomorrow. One way or another, this family would be whole again. The next morning came too early for Marcus, who had spent most of the night strategizing with his security team. David Mitchell spread blueprints across the dining room table while Lily ate her breakfast, blissfully unaware that her father was planning what could be the most dangerous operation of his life. "The warehouse has 4 entry points," David explained, his finger tracing the building's perimeter. "But Kozlov's men patrol in shifts. We have a 30-minute window during the guard change at 3 p.m. Marcus studied the satellite photos James had obtained. The building looked fortress-like, surrounded by chain-link fencing and security cameras. Somewhere inside, Sarah was waiting for rescue. "Daddy?" Lily's voice made him look up. Even after 12 hours, hearing that word from her lips sent warmth through his chest. "Are you going somewhere today?" Marcus knelt beside her chair, choosing his words carefully. "I have some very important business to take care of. Maria will stay with you, and there are some nice security guards who will make sure you're safe." "Is it about Mama?" The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze him. "Yes, sweetheart. It's about Mama." Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out the friendship bracelet she'd made. "Will you give this to her, so she knows I'm okay?" And that I love her? Marcus took the small woven bracelet, feeling its weight like a sacred trust. I promise I'll give it to her personally. And tell her that you're my daddy now. And that we're going to be a real family. I'll tell her everything. At 2:30 that afternoon, Marcus sat in the back of an armored SUV 3 blocks from the warehouse, wearing tactical gear that felt foreign despite his military training from decades ago. His team of 12 men was positioned around the building, waiting for his signal. "Sir," David's voice crackled through his earpiece, "thermal imaging shows 5 heat signatures in the main building. One appears to be restrained in the northeast corner." Sarah. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. After 8 years, he was about to see the woman who had saved his life and given him the greatest gift he'd ever received. "Remember," he told his team, "we go in quiet, we extract the target, and we leave no trace. These men have no idea who they're dealing with." The guard change happened exactly as predicted. Marcus and 4 men slipped through a side entrance, while the rest of his team created diversions around the perimeter. The warehouse smelled of motor oil and decay, filled with shadows that could hide a dozen threats. They moved like ghosts through the labyrinthine interior until they reached the room where Sarah was being held. Marcus's breath caught when he saw her through a grimy window. She was thinner than he remembered, her dark hair shorter, but those eyes, Lily's eyes, were unmistakable. She sat in a chair, her hands bound, staring at the wall with the same quiet strength that had gotten her through years of caring for sick children. 2 guards flanked the door. Marcus's team took them down silently, professionally. When Marcus opened the door, Sarah looked up with a mixture of fear and defiance that transformed into shock when she recognized him. "Marcus!" she whispered, her voice hoarse from weeks of captivity. "Hello, Sarah. I'm here to take you home." "This can't be real," Sarah breathed, as Marcus quickly cut through her restraints. "How did you find me? How did you even know I was missing?" "It's a long story," Marcus said, helping her to her feet. Her legs were unsteady from weeks of confinement, and he steadied her with gentle hands. "Right now, we need to get you out of here." "Marcus, you don't understand. These men, they're looking for Tommy Morrison. They think I know where he hid their money, but I don't know anything. I was just trying to help Lily's babysitter." "Sarah," Marcus's voice was gentle but urgent. "Tommy Morrison is dead, and there's something else you need to know about Lily." The mention of her daughter's name made Sarah's eyes fill with tears. "Is she safe? Please tell me she's safe. I've been going crazy not knowing." "She's more than safe. She's with me." "With you? But how did you?" Sarah's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. "Marcus, what aren't you telling me?" Before he could answer, David's voice exploded through his earpiece. "Sir, we've got company." "Multiple vehicles approaching from the east. Kozlov himself is here." Marcus cursed under his breath. Viktor Kozlov never came to routine operations unless something had gone very wrong. "Sarah, we need to move now." They rushed through the warehouse corridors, Sarah's hand gripping Marcus's arm as they navigated the maze of equipment and storage containers. Behind them, Marcus could hear shouting in Russian as Kozlov's men discovered the unconscious guards. "The main exit is compromised," David reported. "You'll have to go through the loading dock." As they reached the rear of the building, Sarah stumbled and nearly fell. The weeks of captivity had taken their toll, and she was weaker than she wanted to admit. "I can't. I need a minute," she gasped. "You can do this," Marcus said firmly, supporting her weight. "Lily is waiting for you. Our daughter is waiting for you." Sarah stared at him in shock. "Our daughter?" DNA confirmed it yesterday. Lily is mine, Sarah. She's ours." The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. All those years of wondering if she'd made the right choice, of keeping Lily's paternity secret to protect both of them from potential complications in Marcus's high-profile life. And now, when she'd thought she might never see her daughter again, here was Marcus, risking everything to save them both. "You know," she whispered. "I know, and we'll talk about everything once we're safe. Right now, we need to focus on getting home to our little girl." The sound of their daughter's existence on his lips gave Sarah the strength she needed. They reached the loading dock just as David's team created an explosion on the opposite side of the building, drawing Kozlov's men away from their escape route. Marcus's SUV was waiting, engine running. James at the wheel, looking more nervous than Sarah had ever seen anyone look in her life. "Go, go, go!" Marcus shouted as they dove into the back seat. The vehicle lurched forward just as armed men rounded the corner behind them. Gunshots rang out, spiderwebbing the rear window, but they were already pulling onto the main road. "Is everyone okay?" James asked, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Marcus checked Sarah for injuries, while she sat in stunned silence, processing everything that had happened. "We're good. Take us home." "Marcus," Sarah said quietly as they sped through Chicago traffic, 8 years ago when I left the hospital, I was pregnant. I figured that out. I wanted to tell you, but you were this successful businessman, and I was just a nurse. Your recovery was so fragile, and I thought it would be better if I just disappeared." Marcus took her hand, noting how thin her fingers had become. "Sarah, for 8 years I've been building an empire that meant nothing because I had no one to share it with. Yesterday I found out I have a daughter, and she's the most incredible little girl in the world. We have a lot to figure out, but right now, all that matters is that we're both alive and we're going home to her." Sarah began to cry then. 8 years of secrets and 6 weeks of terror finally catching up with her. "Is she really okay?" "They told me. They said if I didn't cooperate, they would find her and hurt her. She's perfect, brave and kind and smart, just like her mother. She made you a friendship bracelet." Marcus pulled the small woven band from his pocket. "She wanted me to give you this and tell you that she loves you." Sarah clutched the bracelet to her chest, overwhelmed by emotion. "I want to see her. I need to see her right now." 5 more minutes, Marcus promised. 5 more minutes, and you'll be home." The Wellington mansion had never felt more like home than it did at that moment when Marcus's SUV pulled into the circular drive. Through the front windows, they could see Lily's small figure pressed against the glass, Maria's protective hand on her shoulder. "Mama!" Lily's voice carried across the distance as she burst through the front door, Maria hurrying behind her. Sarah stumbled getting out of the vehicle, her legs still weak, but nothing could have stopped her from running toward her daughter. They collided in the middle of the driveway, both of them crying and laughing, and holding each other as if they might disappear if they let go. "I missed you so much, baby girl," Sarah sobbed, running her hands through Lily's hair, touching her face, assuring herself that her daughter was real and whole and safe. "I knew you'd come back, Mama. I knew it. And guess what? I found Daddy. His name is Marcus, and he's really nice, and he has a big house, and Maria makes the best pancakes, and he read me stories, and he promised me we'd find you." Sarah looked up at Marcus over Lily's head, seeing him properly for the first time since the hospital 8 years ago. He was older, more distinguished, but his eyes held the same kindness that had comforted her during his recovery. Now those eyes were filled with wonder as he watched his daughter reunite with her mother. "Mama, look!" Lily held up her wrist, showing off a new bracelet Maria had helped her make. "I made one for you, too, and Daddy brought it to you, didn't you, Daddy?" Sarah smiled through her tears at how naturally Lily used the word Daddy, as if she'd been waiting her whole life to have someone to call by that name. "I have it right here," Sarah said, slipping the friendship bracelet onto her wrist. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." That evening, after Sarah had showered and eaten her first real meal in weeks, the 3 of them sat in the living room like the family they were meant to be. Lily was curled up between her parents on the massive sofa, reading them a story from one of her library books. And the little bear found his way home to his family, and they lived happily ever after. Lily concluded, closing the book with satisfaction. "That's my favorite kind of story." "Mine too," Sarah said softly, stroking her daughter's hair. Marcus watched his wife and daughter, because that's what Sarah was, he realized, whether they'd made it official or not, and felt a completeness he'd never experienced before. Even during his first marriage, he'd never felt this sense of rightness, of being exactly where he belonged. "Lily, sweetheart, would you go ask Maria for some hot chocolate for your mama? She needs to get her strength back." "Okay, Daddy." Lily kissed both her parents and skipped out of the room, leaving Marcus and Sarah alone for the first time in 8 years. "She's incredible," Sarah said, her voice full of amazement. "In 6 weeks away from her, she's grown up so much. The way she talks about you, the way she trusts you completely. Marcus, she loves you. I love her too. More than I thought it was possible to love anyone." Sarah studied his face in the firelight. "What happened to you after the hospital? I mean, I know you became successful, but there's something else. Something sad in your eyes." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I was married for 5 years. Elizabeth and I had a son, David. 3 years ago, they were killed by a drunk driver." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never feel anything again. And then I found Lily shivering in an alley and everything changed." "She has that effect on people," Sarah said with a small smile. "Even when she was tiny, she could make the grumpiest nurses smile just by looking at them. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." She nodded, steeling herself. 8 years ago, at the hospital, what happened between us wasn't just nurse and patient, was it?" Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "No, it wasn't. I thought I was imagining things because of the medication, but there were moments when it felt like something more." "There were moments," Sarah admitted. "You were so lost, so hurt, and I wanted to help you heal, but you were vulnerable, and I was supposed to be professional. And then you found out you were pregnant, and I panicked. I convinced myself that what I felt was one-sided, that you were just grateful to me for helping you recover. I thought if I stayed, I'd just complicate your life when you were finally getting better." Marcus reached for her hand. "Sarah, what you felt wasn't one-sided. I looked for you when I got out of the hospital. I wanted to thank you. But more than that, I wanted to see you again. When they told me you'd quit and left no forwarding address, I felt like I'd lost something important. I was scared," she whispered. "I was 26 years old and pregnant, and in love with a man who was so far out of my league that it seemed impossible." "In love?" Sarah met his eyes directly. "Yes, in love. With you." The words hung in the air between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross. Marcus felt his heart racing as he processed what Sarah had just confessed. She had loved him 8 years ago, just as he had been falling for her during those long nights in the hospital. "Sarah," he began, but she held up her hand. "Wait, there's something else you need to know, something I should have told you years ago." Her voice was shaking now, and Marcus felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. "What is it?" "The night before I quit the hospital, I came to see you one last time. You were asleep, but I needed to say goodbye, even if you couldn't hear me." Marcus remembered that night vaguely. He'd been heavily medicated and drifting in and out of consciousness. "There was someone else in your room when I got there. A woman. She said she was your fiancée, Elizabeth." The mention of his late wife's name made Marcus stiffen. "Elizabeth was never my fiancée 8 years ago. We didn't even meet until 6 years ago." Sarah's face went pale. "Marcus, she knew things about you, personal things. She told me you were going to propose to her as soon as you recovered, that she was just waiting for the right moment to announce your engagement publicly." "That's impossible. Elizabeth and I didn't meet until 2018, at a charity function. We were married in 2019. She showed me a ring," Sarah continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "A huge diamond. She said you bought it before the accident and that she was keeping it safe until you were well enough for the proposal." Marcus felt the world tilting around him. What did this woman look like? Blonde, about 30, very elegant. She was wearing expensive clothes and she seemed possessive. "She told me that you had been together for 2 years before the accident and that my little crush was inappropriate and unprofessional." Dear God! Marcus stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "Sarah, the woman you met wasn't Elizabeth. Elizabeth was a brunette, and she was barely 25 when we got married. She was still in graduate school 6 years ago. Then who? Marcus's mind was racing, pieces of a puzzle he'd never known existed clicking into place. I need to make a phone call. He stepped into his study and dialed Dr. Harrison's number, his hands shaking slightly. Patricia, I need you to think back 8 years ago. Was there a blonde woman who came to visit me regularly during my recovery? Someone who claimed to be my fiancée? There was a long pause. Marcus, you're going to think this is strange, but I've been meaning to talk to you about that time. There were some irregularities in your chart. Medications that were ordered but not by your attending physician. What kind of medications? Memory suppressants. Drugs that were designed to help trauma patients forget painful experiences, but they can also affect memory formation in general. Someone was giving you doses that weren't medically necessary. Marcus felt ice form in his veins. Who ordered them? That's what's strange. The orders came through official channels, but when I tried to track them down last month for a research project, the paperwork had been altered. Someone with access to our computer systems had covered their tracks. Patricia, the blonde woman. I remember her. She was very convincing, very authoritative. She had medical knowledge, knew how to talk to staff. We all assumed she was who she said she was. Marcus ended the call and returned to the living room, where Sarah was waiting with growing concern. Marcus, you look like you've seen a ghost. Sarah, I think someone deliberately sabotaged our relationship 8 years ago. Someone who wanted to make sure you disappeared from my life permanently. But why? Who would do something like that? Before Marcus could answer, Lily came running back into the room, followed by Maria carrying a tray of hot chocolate. Mama, Maria says we can make cookies tomorrow if you're feeling better, Lily announced, climbing back onto the sofa. Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances over their daughter's head. Whatever conspiracy had kept them apart for 8 years, whoever had manipulated their lives with such calculated cruelty, it would have to wait. Right now, their family was together, and that was all that mattered. But as Lily chatted excitedly about cookie recipes and Christmas decorations, Marcus's mind was already working on the problem. Someone had gone to elaborate lengths to separate him from Sarah, to make sure their daughter grew up without a father. Someone with medical knowledge, computer access, and enough money to orchestrate a sophisticated deception, someone who might still be a threat to his family. The revelation would have to wait until tomorrow. Tonight was for healing, for reconnecting, for being the family they should have been all along. But tomorrow, Marcus Wellington was going to find out who had stolen 8 years from them. And he was going to make sure they paid for every single day his daughter had spent without him. The next morning, Marcus was in his study before dawn, surrounded by files and computer printouts that James had worked through the night to compile. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to form a picture, and it was more disturbing than he had imagined. "Sir," James said quietly, not wanting to wake the house, "you're not going to believe what we found." Marcus looked up from a stack of hospital records. "Try me. The blonde woman who visited you 8 years ago? Her name was Dr. Victoria Blackwood. She was a psychiatric resident at Chicago General, but she was dismissed 3 months after your discharge for unethical conduct." "What kind of unethical conduct?" "Experimental drug trials on patients without proper consent, manipulating medical records. The investigation was quietly buried because her father sits on the hospital's board of directors." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Her father? Richard Blackwood. He owns Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest medical supply companies in the Midwest. They've been trying to get exclusive contracts with Wellington Industries for years." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Victoria Blackwood hadn't been a random visitor. She'd been conducting some kind of elaborate scheme, possibly to manipulate him while he was vulnerable, potentially to gain access to his business empire through a romantic relationship. Where is she now? That's where it gets interesting, sir. Dr. Victoria Blackwood died in a car accident 4 years ago, but her medical license shows activity up until last month. Someone's been using her identity. It appears so. And, sir, There's more. The car accident that killed your wife and son 3 years ago? Marcus felt the room spin around him. What about it? The drunk driver. Michael Torres had no history of alcohol abuse. His blood alcohol level was consistent with someone who had been drugged, not someone who had been drinking. The case was closed quickly because Torres died in the crash, but the investigating officer noted several inconsistencies in his report. You're telling me Elizabeth and David were murdered? I'm telling you that someone has been manipulating your life for years, sir. Someone who wanted to keep you isolated and vulnerable. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made both men look up. Sarah appeared in the doorway, wearing one of the robes Maria had found for her, her hair still damp from the shower. I'm sorry. I heard voices and wanted to make sure everything was okay. Marcus stood up, his mind reeling from James's revelations. Sarah, we need to talk. All of us. 20 minutes later, they were seated around the kitchen table while Lily ate breakfast and chattered about the snow that had started falling outside. Sarah listened in growing horror as Marcus explained what they had discovered. So this Victoria Blackwood deliberately separated us, and then years later, she may have been involved in killing your first family. Sarah kept her voice low so Lily wouldn't overhear. It's looking that way. The question is why? Daddy, Lily said suddenly, looking up from her pancakes. Who's the lady in the picture? Marcus and Sarah both turned to see what she was talking about. Lily was pointing at James's tablet, which displayed a driver's license photo of Dr. Victoria Blackwood. Where did you see her, sweetheart? Marcus asked gently. She came to Aunt Betty's house a few weeks before Mama went away. She was asking lots of questions about Mama and about me. Aunt Betty told her to go away, but she left her a lot of money. Marcus and Sarah exchanged horrified glances. Victoria Blackwood, or whoever was using her identity, had been tracking their family. She had known about Lily's existence. Lily, this is very important, Sarah said carefully. What kind of questions was she asking? She wanted to know about my daddy, if Mama ever talked about him. She asked Aunt Betty if we had any pictures or papers that Mama kept, and she asked where Mama worked. The timeline was becoming clear. Someone had been systematically gathering information about Sarah and Lily, and 6 weeks later, Sarah had been kidnapped. It wasn't a random crime related to Tommy Morrison's debts. It had been a targeted attack designed to separate Lily from her mother. Sir, James said quietly, if Dr. Blackwood is still alive, and she's been orchestrating all of this, then your family is still in danger. Not anymore, Marcus said with deadly calm. James, I want every security measure we have protecting this house, and I want a full investigation into Dr. Victoria Blackwood, her father, and anyone connected to either of them. Already in progress, sir. Good. Because whoever this woman is, whatever she wants from us, she made one critical mistake. What's that, sir? Marcus looked at his daughter, who was now making shapes in her syrup while humming contentedly, completely unaware that she was the center of a conspiracy that had torn her family apart for years. She underestimated how far I'll go to protect my family. As if sensing the tension in the room, Lily looked up and smiled at both her parents. Are we going to decorate the Christmas tree today? It's only 2 weeks until Christmas, and I've never had a real Christmas tree before. Marcus and Sarah both felt their hearts break a little at that innocent statement. How many Christmases had their daughter spent without the family she deserved? We're going to have the most beautiful Christmas tree you've ever seen, Marcus promised her. And they would. But first, he was going to make sure that whoever had stolen 8 years from their family would never threaten them again. 1 week later, the Wellington mansion was transformed into a Christmas wonderland. Lily had insisted on decorating every room, and Marcus had discovered that saying no to his daughter was virtually impossible. The 12-foot tree in the living room sparkled with thousands of lights and ornaments that Lily had carefully selected from the best shops in Chicago. Daddy, do you think Santa knows I live here now? Lily asked, as she hung a small angel ornament on a low branch. I think Santa always knows where good little girls live, Marcus replied, lifting her up so she could reach a higher spot. Sarah watched from the sofa, finally looking healthy and rested after a week of safety and good food. The friendship bracelet Lily had made still adorned her wrist, and she had refused to take it off even to shower. "Marcus," she said quietly, while Lily was distracted with the ornaments. "Any word from James about the investigation?" "Victoria Blackwood, the real one, died 4 years ago, just as we suspected. But someone has been using her credentials and her father's resources to orchestrate everything that happened to us." "Who?" Before Marcus could answer, James appeared in the doorway with a grim expression. "Sir, we have our answer." Marcus handed Lily another ornament and stepped aside with James and Sarah. "The person who's been manipulating your life, sir, is someone you know, someone who had access to your personal information, your schedule, your vulnerabilities." "Who, James?" "Dr. Patricia Harrison." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Dr. Harrison had been his doctor 8 years ago, had performed Lily's DNA test, had access to all his medical records and personal information. "That's impossible. Patricia has been my friend for years." "Sir, Dr. Harrison has been in love with you since your first stay in the hospital. She's been systematically eliminating anyone who might compete for your affections. She recruited Victoria Blackwood to help her 8 years ago, and when Victoria got cold feet and tried to back out, Patricia arranged her accident." Sarah felt sick. "She manipulated me into leaving, made me think Marcus was engaged to someone else. And then she wormed her way into his life over the years, positioning herself as his trusted doctor and friend. When he married Elizabeth, Dr. Harrison couldn't handle it. She arranged the car accident that killed his wife and son." Marcus felt rage building in his chest, unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "Patricia killed my family?" "No, she was counting on you staying isolated and damaged, dependent on her for support. When you started to heal and move on, she got desperate. The attack on Sarah was her attempt to eliminate the last threat to her fantasy of having you to herself." "Where is she now?" "That's the problem, sir. She's missing. Her house is empty. Her office is cleared out and there's no trace of her anywhere." "Daddy?" Lily's voice cut through the tension. "Why does everyone look so sad? It's Christmas." Marcus forced a smile and returned to his daughter. "We're not sad, sweetheart. We're just talking about grown-up things." "Well, grown-ups think too much. Come help me put the star on top of the tree." As Marcus lifted Lily high above his head so she could place the golden star at the very top of the Christmas tree, he made a silent vow. Dr. Patricia Harrison could run to the ends of the earth, but she would never hurt his family again. He had the resources to find her, and when he did, justice would be served. But that was tomorrow's concern. Tonight was about celebrating their first Christmas as a complete family. "Perfect!" Lily exclaimed as the star settled into place. "Now it's really Christmas." Sarah joined them by the tree, and for the first time in 8 years, Marcus felt complete. His daughter was safe. The woman he loved was by his side, and they had the rest of their lives to make up for the time they'd lost. "I love you both so much," Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes. "I love you too, Mama. And I love you, Daddy. This is the best Christmas ever." Marcus gathered his wife and daughter in his arms, looking up at the star Lily had placed with such care. 8 years ago, a conspiracy had torn them apart, but love had brought them back together, and nothing would ever separate them again. Outside, snow continued to fall on Chicago, blanketing the city in pristine white. Inside the Wellington mansion, a family that had been broken was finally whole, ready to face whatever the future might bring. Together. The little girl, who had been shivering in an alley just 2 weeks ago, was now safe in her father's arms, surrounded by love and warmth and the promise of all the Christmases to come. Sometimes, Marcus thought as he held his precious family close, miracles really do happen, and sometimes they come disguised as a 7-year-old girl with her mother's eyes and a heart big enough to heal a broken man's soul. Their story was just beginning. The poor cleaner's 8-year-old daughter answers an 866 Arabic call, shocking the millionaire. What he does will break your heart. Before we get into the topic, if this video reached you at the right moment, let us know with a simple comment. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more content that connects with you. The mid-morning sunlight slanted through the windows of the Davidson Tower penthouse as Nancy Rodriguez wiped sweat from her brow. 6 hours into her shift, her hands were red and raw from the industrial cleaning products. At 42, her body complained more each year, but she couldn't afford to slow down, not with Emma's tutoring bills to pay. "Miss Rodriguez, where are those files I asked for?" Nancy flinched at Mr. Davidson's sharp tone. The billionaire investment broker stood in his office doorway, his tailored Italian suit worth more than her yearly salary. "Sir, I'm the cleaning lady. Your assistant stepped out for coffee." Robert Davidson glanced at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Right. Well, when she returns, tell her I need the Alfarsi portfolio immediately." Nancy nodded, returning to scrubbing the marble floors. The penthouse offices of Davidson International gleamed with wealth. Crystal chandeliers, gold-framed artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. It was another world from her cramped two-bedroom apartment in Queens, where she and Emma survived on her multiple cleaning jobs. The elevator chimed, and Nancy's heart skipped. Emma appeared, clutching her worn backpack. "Mama, school let out early. Water pipe broke." The 8-year-old bounded toward her, dark pigtails bouncing. "Emma, shh," Nancy whispered, glancing nervously at Davidson's office. "You know you shouldn't come here." "But Miss Wilson dropped me off. She said it was on her way." Nancy sighed. Her neighbor meant well, but one complaint from Davidson and Nancy could lose this job. "Stay quiet and sit in the break room until I finish, okay?" Emma nodded solemnly, but her wide brown eyes were already wandering across the luxurious office. Nancy returned to her work, scrubbing faster. Just 30 more minutes and they could leave. Then the phone rang. Not the regular office line, but the special red phone on Davidson's desk. The private line for his most important clients. "Where is everyone?" Davidson bellowed from the conference room. Nancy glanced at the empty reception area. Davidson's assistant was still out, and his partners had left for lunch. The phone continued its insistent ring. "Emma, don't touch anything," Nancy warned, hurrying to tell Davidson about the call. But before she could reach the conference room, Emma had picked up the red phone. "Davidson International, how may I help you?" the little girl said in perfect professional English. Nancy froze in horror. That line was reserved for billionaire clients and royal investors. Davidson would fire her on the spot. Then something extraordinary happened. Emma's expression changed, and she began speaking fluent Arabic. "Naam Sayyid al-Farsi. Assalamu alaikum. Kaifa haluka?" Emma continued confidently, nodding as if she'd been conducting international business her entire life. Nancy stood paralyzed as Robert Davidson emerged from the conference room, his face contorting in shock and fury at seeing a child on his private line. He lunged toward Emma, but then stopped abruptly when he heard her speaking. Emma switched seamlessly to English. "Mr. Davidson is unavailable at this moment, but I'd be happy to take your information." She grabbed a notepad and began writing, then returned to Arabic. Davidson's expression transformed from anger to astonishment. He turned to Nancy, his mouth open but no words coming out. After several minutes, Emma said, "Shukran jazilan, Mr. Al-Farsi. Mr. Davidson will call you back personally within the hour. Ma salama." She hung up the phone and smiled brightly. "Mama, that was Mr. Khalid Al-Farsi from Saudi Arabia. He says the deal is ready and the $866 million will be transferred once Mr. Davidson calls him back with the final approval codes." The color drained from Davidson's face as he stared at the 8-year-old girl in her faded jeans and unicorn t-shirt. "How?" he began, his voice barely a whisper. "How does she know Arabic?" Before Nancy could answer, Emma replied, "Mama taught me. I know 7 languages now. Arabic, Spanish, French, Mandarin, Russian, Portuguese, and English, of course. She beamed with pride, unaware of the bombshell she'd just dropped. Davidson's gaze shifted to Nancy, seeing for the first time not a cleaning lady, but something else entirely, something that would change all their lives forever. "You have 5 minutes to explain," he said. Nancy's hands trembled as she sat across from Robert Davidson in his private office. Emma waited outside with a tablet Davidson had given her, watching cartoons with oversized headphones. "I'm sorry about the phone, Mr. Davidson. I'll pack my things," Nancy said, eyes downcast. "That's not what I asked," Davidson replied, leaning forward. "Your daughter just saved an $866 million deal with one of the most difficult investors in the Middle East. Khalid Al-Farsi has been wavering for weeks. My Arabic translator quit this morning without notice, and Al-Farsi refuses to speak English on principle." He paused. "I want to know how an 8-year-old speaks perfect business Arabic, and apparently 6 other languages." Nancy exhaled slowly. She'd spent years hiding her past, protecting Emma from disappointment. "I was a language specialist, Mr. Davidson. Before Emma, before." She gestured to her cleaning uniform. "I have a master's degree in linguistics from Georgetown. I was working on my PhD when I got pregnant with Emma. Her father was my professor. When he discovered I was pregnant, he denied everything. I was dismissed from the program." Davidson's expression remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "With no degree, no recommendations, and a baby coming, I took whatever work I could find, but languages were my life, so I taught Emma from birth. She heard Spanish and English at home, Mandarin and French from recordings while she slept. By 4, she was fluent in 4 languages. By 6 languages. We added Arabic last year." "Oh, and you ended up cleaning my office," Davidson said flatly. Nancy lifted her chin. "I work 4 jobs, Mr. Davidson. I clean your office in the mornings, tutor high school students in the afternoons, translate documents freelance at night, and clean a medical office on weekends. Emma attends school on scholarship, but even with that we barely make rent." Davidson was silent for a long moment, studying her. "You're wasting your talents, Ms. Rodriguez." "I'm surviving, Mr. Davidson, and making sure my daughter has opportunities I lost." Davidson stood abruptly and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. The Manhattan skyline stretched before him, a testament to wealth and power. "My Arabic translator quit because I refused his salary demands of $175,000 a year. I thought he was being unreasonable." He turned to face her. "What's your hourly rate as a cleaner, Ms. Rodriguez?" $15, she answered, confused by the shift. "That's approximately $31,200 annually, assuming you work full-time," he calculated aloud. "For someone with your skills, that's criminal." Nancy bristled. "I don't need your pity, Mr. Davidson." "Pity?" He laughed without humor. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm a businessman. I recognize untapped assets when I see them. You and your daughter just demonstrated value to my company that far exceeds your current compensation." He returned to his desk and pressed a button on his phone. "Janet, cancel my afternoon appointments and prepare an employment contract. And find out where Carmichael Academy has its admissions office." Nancy's pulse quickened. "What are you doing?" "Making you an offer, effective immediately. You're no longer my cleaning lady. I want you as my chief multilingual communications specialist. Starting salary $200,000, with benefits and flexible hours so you can be there for Emma." Nancy's world tilted. That's not possible. "I just watched your 8-year-old daughter charm Khalid Al-Farsi in his native tongue and save a deal worth $866 million. Nothing seems impossible anymore." His gaze intensified. "But there's a condition." "There always is," Nancy said cautiously. "Emma needs proper education, not just language, but everything. Carmichael Academy is the best private school in Manhattan. They'll nurture her gifts. We can't afford. Davidson International will establish a scholarship for exceptionally gifted children from underprivileged backgrounds. His tone made it clear this wasn't charity, but investment. Why? Nancy asked, suspicion creeping in. Why would you do this? Davidson's expression hardened slightly. Because I recognize potential, Ms. Rodriguez. Your daughter has it, you have it, and I never waste potential. As Nancy struggled to process what was happening, Emma's voice came from the doorway. Mama, can I show Mr. Davidson something? They turned to see Emma standing there, holding a paper with complex characters drawn across it. I wrote down Mr. Al-Farsi's message in Arabic, she said proudly, walking to Davidson's desk. He said there was something important you should know about Mr. Sami. Davidson took the paper, his eyebrows rising as he read. This changes everything. How did you understand the business terminology? Emma shrugged. Mama has me practice with real business documents for her translation jobs. It's like a game. Davidson looked from Emma to Nancy, then back to the note. Ms. Rodriguez, I believe we have a great deal to discuss about your future and your daughters. The Carmichael Academy hallways gleamed with polished marble and old money. Framed photographs of famous alumni, senators, CEOs, and Pulitzer winners lined the oak-paneled walls. As Nancy walked beside Headmistress Winters, she felt painfully out of place in her one good pantsuit, purchased second-hand for job interviews. Carmichael rarely accepts mid-year transfers, Ms. Rodriguez, the headmistress said, her New England accent crisp. But Mr. Davidson's donation was persuasive. Nancy winced. 2 weeks had passed since the phone call incident, and everything had changed at dizzying speed. She now had an office at Davidson International with her name on the door, Nancy Rodriguez, Director of Multilingual Communications. Emma's test scores are certainly impressive, Headmistress Winters continued, but academic excellence is just one aspect of a Carmichael education. Our families typically have established backgrounds. The implication hung between them. People like you don't belong here. They stopped outside a classroom where Nancy could see Emma sitting at a desk, her second-hand clothes standing out among the uniformed children. We've placed her in our accelerated program, Headmistress Winters said. Though her language abilities are exceptional, we've found some concerning gaps in mathematics and sciences. Nancy bristled. She's advanced in both subjects. She helps me balance my checkbook. Yes, well, practical arithmetic differs from academic mathematics, and her social adjustment may be challenging. Our students come from similar backgrounds. They summer in the Hamptons, ski in Aspen. Their references and experiences are shared. Emma is adaptable, Nancy replied, her tone sharpening, and brilliant. We'll see, the headmistress said with a thin smile. Mr. Davidson has arranged for her uniform and supplies. They'll be delivered tomorrow. Until then, we'll make allowances for her. Current attire. Nancy bit her tongue. This was for Emma's future. She could endure condescension for that. Later that afternoon, Nancy sat in her new office, struggling to concentrate on translating investment documents. Her phone buzzed with a text from the school. Emma involved in incident. Please come immediately. Heart pounding, Nancy rushed to Carmichael. She found Emma sitting outside the headmistress's office, tear tracks on her cheeks. What happened, Mija? Nancy asked, kneeling beside her. I didn't do anything wrong, Mama, Emma whispered. Alexa said my shoes were from the garbage, and everyone laughed. Then during language class, when I corrected Mr. Benoit's French pronunciation, he got angry. Nancy sighed, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulders. The headmistress appeared, her expression severe. Ms. Rodriguez, while we appreciate Emma's linguistic abilities, challenging a teacher's authority is unacceptable at Carmichael. Did my daughter provide incorrect information? Nancy asked calmly. That's not the point. Furthermore, there was an altercation with another student over. personal belongings. You mean when a girl mocked my daughter for not wearing designer shoes? Nancy's voice remained steady, though anger simmered beneath. The headmistress's lips thinned. Perhaps Carmichael isn't the right environment for Emma after all. Are you expelling my daughter on her first day? Nancy stood straighter, her professional demeanor falling into place. I wonder what Mr. Davidson would think, considering his substantial donation. The name worked its magic. The headmistress's expression shifted. Of course not. We simply need to establish appropriate behavioral expectations. As they left the office, Robert Davidson himself stood in the hallway, his imposing figure drawing stares from passing students. I received a call about some trouble, he said, eyes moving between Nancy and Emma. Everything's fine, Nancy assured him quickly. Too quickly. Davidson knelt to Emma's level. What happened, young lady? Emma hesitated, looking at her mother for permission. It's okay. Tell him, Nancy nodded. Some kids made fun of my shoes and clothes, Emma said softly, and the French teacher didn't like that I speak better French than him. Davidson's expression darkened momentarily, then cleared. He stood and placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. Intelligence often intimidates people, Emma. Remember that. He turned to Nancy. I have meetings near here all afternoon. Why don't I take Emma to get her school supplies now? Save you a trip. Nancy's protective instincts flared. That's not necessary. I insist. Davidson's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. She'll need everything immediately to fit in. The right supplies, the right clothes. I have an account at all the appropriate stores. Mr. Davidson, I appreciate everything you've done, but it's an investment in my company's future, Ms. Rodriguez. His tone was pleasant, but firm. Emma's education benefits us all. Before Nancy could protest further, Davidson added, We'll be back at the office by 5. You can focus on the Kuwaiti contracts without distraction. Emma looked up at Nancy with hopeful eyes. Please, Mama, I want to fit in tomorrow. Nancy reluctantly agreed, watching as Davidson led her daughter away. Something in the way he placed his hand on Emma's shoulder, possessive, triumphant, sent a chill through her. As they disappeared down the hallway, Nancy couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing control of something precious. As if, in gaining financial security, she was trading away something far more valuable. The Davidson International boardroom hummed with tension. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a thunderstorm brewing over Manhattan, mirroring the atmosphere inside. Nancy sat rigid in her new designer suit, heart hammering, as 12 executive board members stared at her presentation. 3 months had passed since Emma answered that fateful phone call. Nancy had transformed from cleaning lady to key executive, her linguistic expertise proving invaluable as Davidson International expanded its Middle Eastern portfolio. But success came with unexpected costs. Ms. Rodriguez, you're suggesting we restructure our entire approach to the Saudi market. Thomas Harrington, the silver-haired CFO, looked skeptical. Based on cultural nuances? Yes, Nancy replied firmly. Our current translation service is technically accurate, but culturally tone-deaf. It's costing us millions in delayed negotiations. Robert Davidson watched from the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Their relationship had evolved into something complex, part mentor, part employer, part something she couldn't quite define. His interest in Emma had only intensified with weekly mentoring sessions that made Nancy increasingly uneasy. The Al-Farsi group has specifically requested Ms. Rodriguez handle all communications moving forward, Davidson said, effectively ending debate. Their $866 million investment has already increased by 12% under her guidance. The executives nodded with new respect. Money spoke the only language they all understood. After the meeting, Davidson asked Nancy to stay behind. Brilliant presentation, he said, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. You've exceeded my expectations. Thank you, Nancy accepted the glass but didn't drink. "Mr. Davidson, there's something we need to discuss about Emma." His expression shifted subtly. "Is there a problem at Carmichael?" "Not with her education. She's thriving academically." Nancy chose her words carefully, "But she mentioned you've discussed taking her to Saudi Arabia for the Al-Farsi negotiations next month." "She'd be an incredible asset," Davidson said smoothly. "Khalid adores her. Having a child prodigy as our cultural ambassador would give us an unbeatable advantage." "She's 8 years old, not an asset," Nancy said, setting down her untouched scotch, "and she needs to be in school, not international business meetings." Davidson's smile cooled. "Nancy, surely you understand what's at stake. The Al-Farsi deal could expand to billions. Emma's gift shouldn't be wasted in a classroom when she could be making history." "By making history, you mean making you money," Nancy replied, tension rising. "I'm grateful for everything you've done for us, but Emma's future is not negotiable." Davidson leaned back, studying her. "You know, when I first saw you scrubbing my floors, I never imagined you'd be sitting across from me in Armani, refusing a request." His tone was light, but his eyes were calculating. "Life changes quickly, doesn't it?" "Some things don't change," Nancy replied. "My priority has always been Emma's well-being." "And you think I don't have her best interests at heart?" Davidson spread his hands. "Look at everything I've provided. The best education, opportunities most children could never dream of. She has a future now." "She always had a future," Nancy said quietly. "Maybe not with wealth or privilege, but with love and integrity." Davidson's expression hardened. "Noble sentiments don't pay Carmichael's tuition or the mortgage on your new apartment." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "Think carefully about your position, Nancy. Everything in your new life exists because I recognize value and reward it accordingly. If Emma's linguistic gifts are no longer available to Davidson International, I would have to reconsider the company's investment in both of you." The threat hung in the air between them. Nancy felt a cold realization wash over her. The golden cage had been there all along. She just hadn't wanted to see the bars. "I need to pick up Emma," she said, rising. "We'll continue this discussion tomorrow." "Of course," Davidson smiled, all business again. "Oh, and Nancy. Emma mentioned she's learning Japanese now. Fascinating coincidence. We're exploring a major acquisition in Tokyo next quarter." As Nancy left the building, the storm broke overhead. She ducked into a coffee shop, hands shaking as she called her old friend Sophia, who'd warned her about Davidson's reputation. "He's using Emma," Nancy whispered into the phone. "I thought he was helping us, but he's just exploiting her talent." Sophia's response was gentle but firm. "You knew who he was, Nancy. Men like Davidson don't give without taking more in return. What do I do? We can't go back to how things were. Emma loves her school, our new home. For the first time, she has opportunities I always dreamed of giving her. The question is, what price are you willing to pay? And more importantly, what price will Emma pay?" As rain lashed the windows, Nancy made a decision. She would find a way to break free from Davidson's influence without sacrificing Emma's future. She just needed time and a plan. Across town, in Davidson's penthouse office, the billionaire made a phone call. "I need information on Nancy Rodriguez's past," he told his private investigator. "Something tells me our miraculous linguist is hiding something that might help me secure her daughter's extraordinary talents permanently." Cherry blossoms drifted across the Carmichael Academy courtyard as parents gathered for the spring showcase. 5 months had passed since Emma had answered that life-changing phone call, and outwardly, everything was perfect. Nancy sat in the front row, her designer dress and carefully styled hair making her indistinguishable from the wealthy mothers around her, at least on the surface. On stage, Emma stood confidently before the assembled parents and administrators. At just 8 years old, she'd become something of a celebrity at Carmichael. Today, she would demonstrate her linguistic abilities by giving the same welcome speech in all 7 languages she knew. My journey began with my mother's voice. Emma started in English, her clear voice carrying across the auditorium. She taught me that languages are bridges between worlds. As Emma transitioned seamlessly into Spanish, then French, then Mandarin, Nancy felt pride swell within her chest, but mingled with that pride was fear. During the past months, Robert Davidson's influence over their lives had grown increasingly controlling. He sat beside Nancy now, applauding enthusiastically as Emma completed her Arabic portion. To everyone else, he appeared the generous benefactor, the visionary who discovered a prodigy from humble beginnings. Only Nancy saw the calculation behind his smiles, the way his eyes tracked Emma like a valuable acquisition. "She's remarkable," Davidson whispered. "The Kuwaiti ambassador asked specifically if she could join our meeting next week." "She has exams," Nancy replied quietly. "I've spoken with Headmistress Winters. It's arranged." Nancy's hands tightened in her lap. This was their new normal. Davidson making decisions about Emma's life, manipulating circumstances so Nancy's objections became moot. After the showcase, a reception was held in the school's grand hall. Wealthy parents swarmed around Emma, asking her to say phrases in different languages, treating her like an exotic exhibit. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" Nancy turned to find Headmistress Winters, approaching with an elegant woman in her 60s. "This is Margaret Whitmore, head of the Global Youth Initiative. She's very interested in Emma's gifts." The woman extended a manicured hand. "Your daughter is extraordinary. We identify exceptional children worldwide for specialized education. Our program would provide Emma with opportunities beyond even Carmichael's resources." Nancy smiled politely. "That's very kind, but Emma is thriving here." "The program is quite selective," Margaret continued. "Only 12 children worldwide are chosen annually. They study at our campus in Switzerland with the world's leading experts in their fields." Switzerland, thousands of miles away. Nancy's suspicion flared. "Did Mr. Davidson introduce you to Emma's case?" Margaret's smile flickered. "He's one of our most generous donors. When he mentioned Emma's abilities, we were naturally interested." Of course, another of Davidson's chess moves, positioning Emma further from Nancy's influence. "I appreciate the opportunity," Nancy said carefully, "but Emma is only 8. She belongs with her mother." "The program begins at age 9, Margaret replied. "We understand family bonds, but exceptional children have exceptional needs. Our campus includes family accommodations for periodic visits." Periodic visits. The words chilled Nancy to her core. "I'll need to think about it," she said, already knowing her answer. Later, as Nancy and Emma prepared to leave, Davidson intercepted them by the entrance. "The Whitmores are hosting a dinner tonight at the Pierre," he said. "Emma should meet their son William. He attended the Swiss program and now studies at MIT, at 14. "We have plans," Nancy lied. "Cancel them," Davidson said, his tone pleasant but firm. "This is important for Emma's future. The application deadline for next year's cohort is approaching." "I haven't agreed to any Swiss program," Nancy replied, keeping her voice low despite her rising anger. Davidson's smile remained, but his eyes hardened. "Nancy, be reasonable. This is an unparalleled opportunity. Most parents would sacrifice anything for such a chance." "That's just it," Nancy said. "I won't sacrifice my relationship with my daughter for any opportunity, no matter how prestigious." Davidson placed a hand on her arm, guiding her slightly away from nearby parents. "Your dedication is admirable, but potentially misguided. Emma's gifts could change the world, but only with proper development. She's a child, not a corporate asset to be developed," Nancy hissed. "Of course, but children grow up. The question is, into what?" His grip tightened slightly. into someone extraordinary with global influence, or someone limited by a mother's fear of letting go. The accusation stung. Nancy pulled her arm away. This conversation is over. Emma and I are going home. Ms. Rodriguez, Davidson's voice dropped, remember your position. The scholarship, your job, the apartment, all can be reassessed if you're not making decisions in Emma's best interest. Before Nancy could respond, Emma appeared at her side, still glowing from her success. Mama, can we get ice cream to celebrate? Nancy forced a smile. Of course, Mija. Davidson knelt to Emma's level. How would you like to have dinner with me tonight? At a fancy hotel with important people who want to meet you. They have a special school in Switzerland where children like you learn amazing things. Emma's eyes widened. Like Hogwarts? Davidson chuckled. Even better. And I've heard their ice cream is magnificent. Emma looked up at Nancy, excitement evident. Can we go, Mama? Trapped, Nancy nodded, watching as Davidson's mask of benevolence slipped back into place. She needed to act soon, before his influence over Emma grew stronger, before Switzerland became a reality. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Nancy made a phone call to Miguel Ortiz, a former colleague from her linguistics days who now worked at the United Nations. I need a way out, Miguel, she whispered. Davidson is trying to separate me from Emma. I need another option, a job where my skills matter, but Emma stays with me. The UN has an opening in the translation department, Miguel replied. The pay won't match Davidson's, but there's a school for diplomats' children with an excellent language program. When can I interview? Next week. But Nancy, be careful. Men like Davidson don't let valuable assets walk away easily. As she hung up, Nancy glanced at Emma's peacefully sleeping form. Whatever came next, they would face it together. No golden cage was worth the price of her daughter's freedom, or her own. The manila envelope arrived at Nancy's apartment on a Tuesday morning, delivered by private courier. No return address, just her name typed on a plain label. Inside was a single photograph. Nancy, 9 years younger, standing outside Georgetown University with Professor James Harlow, Emma's father. A yellow sticky note bore a handwritten message. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., my office. Come alone, R.D. Nancy's hands trembled as she stuffed the envelope into her purse. Davidson had found Harlow. After 9 years of protecting Emma from the truth about her father's rejection, Davidson had unearthed her most painful secret. In his penthouse office the next day, Davidson sat behind his massive desk, morning sunlight casting his features in sharp relief. He didn't rise when Nancy entered, just gestured to the chair across from him. Professor James Harlow, Davidson said, sliding a file toward her. Currently Dean of Linguistics at Cambridge University. Married to Helena Harlow, daughter of British media magnate William Templeton. 2 children, officially. Nancy remained silent, her face carefully neutral despite the churning in her stomach. Harlow's biography conveniently omits his time at Georgetown, Davidson continued, or his affair with a brilliant graduate student named Nancy Rodriguez, or the daughter that resulted from that affair. What do you want, Robert? Nancy asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The UN Translation Department. Really, Nancy? Davidson's smile was cold. Did you think I wouldn't know about your interview next week? Of course he knew. Davidson's network of influence seemed limitless. This is about control, Nancy said. You can't stand that I won't let you turn Emma into your personal corporate asset. This is about potential, Davidson countered. Emma could have everything, the finest education, connections to world leaders, a future beyond anything you could provide on a UN translator's salary. With the small price of being separated from her mother and manipulated by you. Davidson leaned forward. I'm offering you a choice. Option 1. The Switzerland program. You'll receive a generous compensation package and visitation rights. Emma gets world-class opportunities. Visitation rights to my own daughter. Nancy's voice rose. That's not a choice. Option 2 is less pleasant, Davidson continued, as if she hadn't spoken. Professor Harlow's reputation, marriage, and career depend on his carefully constructed image. This file contains DNA evidence of Emma's paternity, plus documentation of how Harlow abused his position with a student, then engineered her dismissal when she became pregnant. Nancy's blood ran cold. You'd destroy him. I'd expose the truth, Davidson corrected, unless he asserts his parental rights and enrolls Emma in the Switzerland program himself. With his family connections, he'd easily gain custody of a child you've kept from him for 8 years. That's not what happened, Nancy whispered. It's his word against yours. A distinguished dean versus a former cleaning lady. Davidson's eyes were pitiless. Who do you think the courts will believe? Nancy's mind raced. Davidson had orchestrated everything from the beginning. The job offer, Carmichael Academy, the accidental meeting with the Swiss program director, all to separate her from Emma. Why? She asked finally. Why Emma? There are other linguistic prodigies. None like Emma, Davidson replied. Her abilities are unprecedented. 7 languages perfectly spoken at 8 years old. She can become anything, a diplomat, an intelligence asset, a corporate negotiator worth billions, but only with the right guidance. Your guidance, Nancy said bitterly. I recognize her potential because I lived it, Davidson said, his voice softening slightly. I was discovered by a businessman who saw past my circumstances. I grew up in the Bronx, Nancy. Foster care. No one wanted me until Jeremiah Davidson recognized my aptitude for numbers and languages. For the first time, Nancy glimpsed something genuine in him, a reflection of his own past in Emma's present. He adopted me, gave me his name, his opportunities. Without him, I'd have been nothing. I'm offering Emma the same chance. There's a difference, Nancy said quietly. Jeremiah Davidson saved an unwanted child from foster care. You're trying to take a loved child from her mother. Something flickered across Davidson's face, doubt, perhaps, or a moment of recognition. You have 1 week to decide, he said finally. Switzerland with your blessing and involvement, or a custody battle you'll lose. Nancy stood, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Except one thing. And what's that? Emma, you've calculated every adult's response, manipulated every circumstance. But Emma is not a pawn, Robert. She's a person, with her own mind and heart. She's a child who'll follow the path set by adults, Davidson replied dismissively. Nancy reached for the door, then paused. Did you ever resent him, Jeremiah, for deciding your life's direction? The question caught Davidson off guard. For a moment, his mask slipped, revealing something wounded beneath. He saved me, Davidson said, but there was a hollowness to the words. At what cost? Nancy asked softly, then left without waiting for an answer. Outside, Manhattan's streets pulsed with midday activity. Nancy walked aimlessly, her mind whirling with impossible choices. She couldn't fight Davidson's legal machine, couldn't bear to see Emma taken by a father who'd rejected her before birth. Couldn't accept Switzerland and periodic visitation. Her phone buzzed with a text from Carmichael Academy. Please come immediately. Incident involving Emma. Nancy's heart lurched as she hailed a taxi. At the school, she found Emma sitting outside the headmistress's office, clutching something in her small hands. What happened, Miha? Nancy asked, kneeling beside her. Emma opened her hands to reveal a beautiful enameled music box. Mr. Davidson gave me this yesterday. It plays a song when you open it. I brought it for show and tell, but when I opened it in class, it started playing a recording of me speaking all my languages instead of music. Everyone was impressed, but then Headmistress Winters got really angry and took it away. Nancy felt ice in her veins. A recording? The headmistress appeared, her expression grave. Ms. Rodriguez, this device contains sophisticated recording technology disguised as a child's trinket. It's been recording everything said in its vicinity and transmitting the data externally. This is a serious violation of privacy laws and school policy. She handed Nancy a business card. This was inside the mechanism. Perhaps you can explain. The card belonged to Margaret Whitmore of the Global Youth Initiative, the Swiss program. Suddenly everything clicked into place. Davidson wasn't just separating Emma from Nancy, he was documenting Emma's abilities for the program application, using her as an unwitting demonstration subject. "Where is the music box now?" Nancy asked. "Our IT department is examining it. We're considering involving authorities." As the headmistress continued about privacy violations, Nancy's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Khalid Al-Farsi requests meeting. Concerns Davidson. Plaza Hotel, 4 p.m. today. Nancy stared at the message. Khalid Al-Farsi, the Saudi businessman whose call Emma had answered months ago. The catalyst for everything that followed. For the first time since the envelope arrived that morning, Nancy felt something beyond fear and despair. She felt a glimmer of hope. "Headmistress Winters, I need to take Emma home now, and I'd like that music box as evidence." Something in Nancy's tone must have conveyed the severity of the situation, because the headmistress simply nodded. As they left Carmichael Academy, Emma looked up at her mother. "Are we in trouble, Mama?" Nancy squeezed her daughter's hand. "No, mija, but we need to be very brave now. We're going to meet someone who might help us." "Who?" "Mr. Al-Farsi, the man you spoke Arabic with on the red phone. Do you remember?" Emma nodded solemnly. "I remember everything, Mama." "Good," Nancy said, raising her hand to hail a taxi, "because it's time for both of us to use everything we know." The Plaza Hotel's opulence seemed to exist in another universe from Nancy's former life. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors while uniformed staff moved with practiced discretion. Emma gripped her mother's hand tightly as they were escorted to a private suite. "Remember, Misha, speak only when spoken to," Nancy whispered. "Mr. Al-Farsi is a very important man." The suite doors opened to reveal Khalid Al-Farsi, tall and distinguished in his traditional thobe, with silver-streaked beard and penetrating eyes. "Ms. Rodriguez," Al-Farsi's accent was mild, his English perfect, "and the remarkable Emma, thank you for coming." As they sat, Al-Farsi studied Emma with undisguised interest. "You are even younger than I imagined on the telephone. 7 languages at 8 years old. Extraordinary." "Thank you, sir," Emma replied in flawless Arabic. Al-Farsi smiled, switching back to English. "A wise woman, your mother." He turned to Nancy. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'll be direct. Robert Davidson contacted me about investing in a Swiss educational program. He specifically mentioned Emma as its star recruit, with himself as her legal guardian." Nancy's breath caught. "He has no right—" "I'm aware," Al-Farsi interrupted gently. "My investigators are thorough. Davidson's behavior concerned me, so I made inquiries." He handed Nancy a folder containing photographs of Davidson meeting with Professor Harlow and Margaret Whitmore, plus legal documents outlining custody transfer procedures. "He's been planning this for months," Nancy whispered. "Since the day Emma answered his phone," Al-Farsi confirmed. "The $866 million deal was genuine, but your daughter's intervention provided Davidson something he values more than money: control over a truly extraordinary asset." "Emma is not an asset," Nancy said sharply. "To you, she is a daughter. To Davidson, he collects potential. It's how he built his empire, finding exceptional talent and binding it to him through debt, gratitude, or legal obligation. Like he tried with me, Nancy realized. The job, the apartment, the school, all creating dependency. Davidson miscalculated with you. He assumed financial need would override maternal instinct. What does he want with Emma? Nancy asked. The Global Youth Initiative appears educational, but functions primarily as a talent pipeline for governments and corporations. Its graduates emerge with unbreakable loyalty to their sponsors. Davidson himself was one such recruit decades ago. Emma spoke up. Is Mr. Davidson a bad man? Al-Farsi considered the question seriously. No, child. He believes he offers opportunity, but his version requires surrendering your freedom to choose your own path. Why are you helping us? Nancy asked. You're Davidson's business partner. I was raised with 7 sisters. Family bonds are sacred in my culture. What Davidson proposes violates principles I hold dear. Al-Farsi leaned forward. I propose an alternative. My foundation needs someone to coordinate translation services, someone with your qualifications. Nancy blinked. You're offering me a job. With appropriate compensation, flexible hours, and access to an international school in London where Emma's gifts would be nurtured alongside children of diplomats. No separation, no Switzerland. What about Davidson? He won't simply let us go. Al-Farsi smiled. Leave Davidson to me, his recording device on Emma. Corporate espionage carries serious penalties. The music box, Emma whispered. Indeed, most unfortunate it recorded his own incriminating conversations as well. Al-Farsi produced a flash drive. You have 24 hours to decide. If you accept, a private jet will depart for London tomorrow evening. As they left, Emma chattering excitedly about London, Nancy's phone buzzed with a text from Davidson. My office, 9 a.m. tomorrow, final decision time. The next morning dawned grey and rainy as Nancy rode the elevator to Davidson's penthouse office. Emma was safely with Sophia, unaware that today would determine her future. Davidson stood at his window, watching rain lash against the glass. He didn't turn when Nancy entered. You missed the emergency board meeting this morning, he said. Khalid Al-Farsi has withdrawn all investments from Davidson International. $866 million gone overnight. I'm sorry to hear that, Nancy said, keeping her voice neutral. Davidson turned, his expression harder than she'd ever seen it. Interesting coincidence. You meet with Al-Farsi, and suddenly my largest investor abandons a highly profitable partnership. Perhaps he discovered something that changed his mind. Like a recording device? Davidson's smile was cold. Yes, I know about your meeting. I know everything, Nancy. He tossed a legal document onto his desk. Custody papers, already filed with the court. Professor Harlow was remarkably cooperative once he understood the stakes. Nancy felt ice in her veins as she scanned the document. James Harlow was asserting paternity and seeking full custody of Emma, citing extraordinary educational needs and mother's interference with educational opportunities. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a pragmatist, Davidson corrected. Emma's gifts are too valuable to waste. One day she'll thank me for ensuring her potential wasn't squandered. She'll hate you for separating her from her mother. Children adapt. I did. Davidson straightened his tie. The hearing is next week. Given Harlow's standing and the evidence of your interference with Emma's opportunities, I expect a swift resolution. Now, what about Al-Farsi's offer? London would provide everything you claim to want for Emma's education. Under Al-Farsi's influence, not mine. Davidson shook his head. Emma deserves the best. Nancy fought to control her panic. What if I convinced Al-Farsi to reinvest with certain conditions, a compromise? Davidson considered this. Interesting. What conditions? Emma remains with me. No Switzerland. Instead, she attends Carmichael with supplemental instruction. Alfarsi and Davidson International jointly fund her education. And what do I get in this arrangement? Legitimate access to Emma's linguistic abilities for appropriate business purposes. With my supervision and reasonable limitations, Davidson studied her calculatingly. Alfarsi's reinvestment would need to include penalties for early withdrawal, and I'd require documented involvement in Emma's educational planning. I'll speak with him today. Do that. Davidson checked his watch. I have a lunch meeting. If Alfarsi declines, the custody hearing proceeds as scheduled. Outside, rain soaked Nancy as she walked blindly through Midtown. She'd bought time, nothing more. Her phone rang. Alfarsi. Have you decided? He asked. Davidson knows everything. He's filed custody papers with Emma's biological father. This complicates matters but changes nothing. The offer stands. He'll fight us in court. Emma's father has status, connections, and a history he wishes to keep hidden, Alfarsi interjected. My investigators have been thorough. Professor Harlow's cooperation with Davidson was coerced. Given the right assurances, his position might shift. What assurances? Financial security for his legitimate family, discretion regarding his past, and no obligation to participate in his abandoned daughter's life beyond legal documentation. Later, Nancy received a package from Margaret Whitmore containing evidence of the Swiss program's true purpose, creating specialized assets with linguistic and cognitive conditioning. Children separated from families and molded into valuable intelligence and corporate tools. A final video showed Whitmore herself. Ms. Rodriguez, I joined the initiative believing we served gifted children. The truth is darker. Save your daughter. Run. Nancy's phone buzzed with a text from Alfarsi. Harlow has withdrawn the custody petition. Legal documentation confirmed. The way is clear. She glanced at the clock, 3:47 p.m., just over 3 hours until the plane departed. Enough time to collect Emma from Sophia's, grab their emergency bags, and escape. London greeted them with typical English drizzle and the promise of a fresh start. Alfarsi had arranged a comfortable flat in South Kensington, walking distance from the International Academy, where Emma would begin classes the following week. 3 days had passed since their hasty departure from New York, and their new life was just beginning to sink in. Mama, look! Is that our new home? Emma pressed her face against the taxi window as they pulled up to a charming Victorian townhouse, its brick facade softened by climbing ivy. Yes, mija. Nancy smiled, though anxiety still knotted her stomach. Davidson's reach was long, and his anger at their escape would be formidable. Their flat occupied the building's second floor, high ceilings and tall windows that filled the space with soft grey light. Modern furniture mixed with vintage pieces, creating a warm atmosphere miles away from the sterile luxury of their Manhattan apartment. It's perfect, Emma whispered, running from room to room with excitement. And is that my school uniform? She pointed to a navy blazer hanging on a bedroom door. You start Monday, Nancy confirmed. The school has children from 30 different countries. You'll have language clubs, cultural exchange programs, and friends who won't make fun of me for knowing too much? Emma asked hopefully. Nancy's heart squeezed. Exactly. Being multilingual is normal there. Celebrated even. As Nancy's phone rang with Alfarsi's number, she answered immediately. You're settled? He asked without preamble. Yes, thank you. Emma's thrilled about school. Excellent. Your position at the Linguistic Heritage Foundation begins tomorrow. My assistant will collect you at 9. His tone softened. And Ms. Rodriguez? Davidson has made inquiries in London. Nancy's breath caught. He's looking for us already. As expected, but your documentation lists you as Nancy Vega, a Brazilian-American specialist recruited from São Paulo. Emma is enrolled as Emma Vega. Different paper trail. Will it be enough? combined with legal warnings about harassment and the evidence we possess regarding his recording devices? Yes. Davidson is ambitious, not foolish. The next morning, Al-Farsi's assistant, a brisk Englishwoman named Penelope, escorted Nancy to the Foundation's headquarters near Regent's Park. As multilingual communications director, Nancy would coordinate between field researchers and translation teams, beginning with indigenous languages of the Amazon basin. Meanwhile, Emma flourished at the International Academy. Unlike Carmichael's rigid hierarchy, the Academy embraced diversity. Emma's linguistic abilities earned admiration rather than resentment, and she came home chattering about friends rather than isolation. 3 weeks into their London life, Nancy received an unexpected visitor at the Foundation. She looked up to find Khalid Al-Farsi himself standing in her office doorway. "I'm in London briefly and wanted to see how you're adjusting," he explained. After discussing her work, Nancy asked directly, "Why did you really help us, Mr. Al-Farsi?" If the question surprised him, he didn't show it. "Several reasons. The practical, Davidson's methods concern me. Business requires trust, and men who view people as commodities eventually extend that view to everything." And the personal reasons? 30 years ago, I had a daughter with extraordinary mathematical abilities. My family wished her to attend a special program in Switzerland, the predecessor to Davidson's initiative. Nancy's pulse quickened. What happened? I was young, ambitious, easily convinced by promises of exceptional opportunity. I allowed them to take her. His eyes darkened. 2 years later, they returned a different child. Technically brilliant, but emotionally damaged. The connection between us was severed. She works now for a technology firm in Singapore, calls dutifully on holidays, but remains a stranger. "I'm so sorry," Nancy whispered. "When I heard Emma on that phone call, then discovered Davidson's interest in her, I recognized history preparing to repeat itself. You're protecting Emma from your daughter's fate. I'm offering the choice I should have made 3 decades ago, nurturing exceptional abilities without destroying the child who possesses them." 6 months passed in London, bringing crisp autumn, then winter, and finally the first hesitant signs of spring. The Rodriguez women, now officially the Vegas, had settled into rhythms that felt remarkably normal. Nancy's work at the Linguistic Heritage Foundation had expanded to include developing a revolutionary translation algorithm. Emma, now 9, had become one of the International Academy's star pupils, adding Hindi and Japanese to her linguistic repertoire. Davidson had returned to New York after his failed London fundraising venture, his Swiss program jeopardized by mysterious leaks about its true nature. Financial News reported Davidson International struggling with investor concerns and regulatory inquiries about corporate espionage. One morning, Penelope appeared in Nancy's doorway, her typically unflappable demeanor slightly disturbed. "There's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent." Before Nancy could respond, a woman appeared, elegantly dressed, mid-30s, with striking features that combined Asian and European ancestry. "Ms. Rodriguez," the woman said, using Nancy's real name deliberately, "I'm Sophia Davidson. We need to talk." Nancy's blood ran cold. Davidson's daughter. Once they were alone, Sophia took a seat without waiting for invitation. "You've caused quite the upheaval in my father's life." "Your father tried to take my child," Nancy replied evenly. "Yes, he did. My father's methods have always been problematic, especially regarding gifted children. Why are you here? How did you find me?" "And finding you wasn't difficult. Father keeps meticulous records of his obsessions." Sophia placed a portfolio on Nancy's desk. "I'm trying to prevent a tragedy. My father is dying." "Dying? Pancreatic cancer, terminal, 3 months, perhaps 4. He was diagnosed shortly after you left New York. The prognosis was immediately clear, but he refused to accept it. Nancy felt strangely hollow. I'm sorry for your family, but I don't see how this concerns Emma and me. My father's illness has intensified certain fixations. He speaks of Emma constantly, reviews her files, watches recordings of her speaking different languages. He's convinced she represents his most important legacy. He's still trying to find her. In his more lucid moments, he understands that pursuit is futile, but as the illness progresses, his obsession grows. Sophia opened the portfolio, revealing legal documents barring Davidson from contact with Nancy or Emma and establishing trusts for Emma's education. Why would he agree to this? Nancy asked. He hasn't. But as his health deteriorates, I've assumed control of Davidson International. These agreements, once signed, will be binding regardless of my father's objections. You're acting against your father's wishes. I'm acting to preserve what remains of his legacy and protect an innocent child from his fixation. Sophia hesitated. I was once in a similar program, in Geneva, not Zurich, but the same approach. You were separated from your family? My mother died when I was 7. Father was building his empire and believed the program offered superior opportunities. Her voice remained steady, but something haunted flickered in her eyes. I was 12 when I returned to New York. Academically advanced, fluent in 5 languages, and completely estranged from my father. I'm sorry, Nancy said softly. With Emma, something different is happening. He sees himself in her story, the gifted child from humble beginnings. He believes he's offering the salvation Jeremiah Davidson once offered him. By destroying her relationship with her mother, Nancy said. Precisely. In his mind, it's a necessary sacrifice for greater opportunity. Sophia tapped the documents. These ensure that fantasy can never become reality, regardless of what happens with his illness. Cherry blossoms floated on spring breezes across London's parks as Nancy walked home from the foundation. 2 years had passed since their escape from New York, since Davidson's daughter had appeared with legal documents ensuring their safety. In that time, Nancy had confirmed through discreet channels that Robert Davidson had indeed died 8 months after Sophia's visit. Life had settled into comfortable patterns. Nancy's translation algorithm had revolutionized the Foundation's work, earning her professional recognition she'd once thought forever lost. At 11, Emma was thriving at the International Academy, her linguistic abilities now encompassing 10 languages. They had built a good life, secure, fulfilling, with opportunities neither had dared imagine during their struggling New York days, which made the message on Nancy's phone all the more unsettling. Urgent meeting requested. Plaza Hotel, London, tomorrow, 2 p.m. K.A. The next day, Nancy entered the Plaza's elegant lobby with a sense of déjà vu. Al-Farsi waited in a private salon, looking older than she remembered, still distinguished, but with deeper lines around his eyes. Ms. Rodriguez, he greeted her. Thank you for coming. Your message sounded urgent, Nancy replied, taking a seat across from him. Indeed. Al-Farsi waited until they were alone before continuing. The Swiss program Davidson championed, it continues, despite his death and the scandals that surrounded it. Nancy felt a cold weight in her stomach. How is that possible? The program has relocated, rebranded, with new financial backers. They still recruit exceptional children worldwide. They've identified another linguistically gifted child in Mumbai, 8 years old, fluent in 6 languages. Nancy's pulse quickened. You want to intervene as you did with Emma? Yes, but I need your help. How? The child's parents are skeptical but tempted by the program's promises. They're educated people with limited resources, much like you were. And you want me to share my experience, the reality behind the promises? Yes, your story could be powerful testimony. Nancy considered the request carefully. For 2 years, she'd focused on building their new life, deliberately avoiding thoughts of Davidson and the Swiss program. The child's name is Priya, Al-Farsi added quietly. She reminds me very much of Emma at that age. The name struck Nancy like a physical blow. Priya, like Emma's friend from school? The same. Your daughter befriended Priya Sharma during a cultural exchange last term. Emma taught her Japanese origami. Priya taught Emma Hindi songs. The program identified Priya through that exchange. Emma's friendship inadvertently brought her to their attention. Oh, God, Nancy whispered, horrified. Emma will blame herself if Priya disappears into that program, which is why we must prevent it. Al-Farsi's tone was gentle but firm. The Sharma family arrives in London tomorrow for a preliminary assessment at what they believe is a prestigious academy. In reality, it's the first step in separation. Nancy agreed to meet the Sharmas, telling them her story, from cleaning Davidson's office to Emma answering the Arabic call, from the initial opportunities to the gradual revelation of Davidson's true intentions. She explained the Swiss program's history of separating gifted children from families, the emotional conditioning designed to transfer attachment from parents to institutional loyalty. The Sharmas listened with increasing concern, their initial politeness giving way to pointed questions. By the meeting's end, they had cancelled their assessment appointment and were exploring alternative options, including the International Academy Emma attended. Will the program recruiters simply move on to another child? Nancy asked Al-Farsi later. Perhaps, but each intervention creates difficulty for them, exposes their methods, forces them to work harder to hide their true purpose. Al-Farsi's tone grew thoughtful. Change happens gradually, Ms. Rodriguez. One family, one child at a time. Sunlight streamed through tall windows as Nancy organized papers on her desk, preparing for the Foundation's annual conference. 5 years had passed since their escape from New York, since Davidson's attempt to separate her from Emma. In that time, their London life had evolved from temporary refuge to permanent home. Emma, now 13, had blossomed into a remarkably balanced teenager despite her extraordinary abilities. With 12 languages in her repertoire, she had become the youngest ever student ambassador for the International Academy's Cultural Exchange Program. Nancy's work at the Linguistic Heritage Foundation had expanded dramatically, her translation algorithm earning international recognition. Life had stabilized, wounds had healed, and the shadows of their past had receded, until today's email arrived from Sophia Davidson. Estate matters finalized. Father's personal effects include items concerning E. Please advise regarding disposition. SD. Before Nancy could consider her response, her office phone rang. Ms. Vega, there's a young woman here insisting on seeing you. She doesn't have an appointment. Her name, Layla Al-Farsi. Nancy froze. Al-Farsi's daughter, the one he'd sent to the Swiss program 30 years ago? Send her in. Moments later, a striking woman in her 30s entered Nancy's office. Ms. Rodriguez, she said, using Nancy's original name deliberately. I'm Layla Al-Farsi. I know of you through your father, though we've never met. My father speaks highly of you and your daughter. He considers your case his most important intervention against the program. Your program, Nancy observed quietly. Yes. I spent 7 years in the Geneva iteration. Layla explained she and Sophia Davidson had been working together for 3 years, and that Davidson had kept extensive research on Emma's linguistic development. The items Davidson kept, their research. Extensive documentation of Emma's linguistic development, patterns your teaching methods established, theoretical frameworks based on her acquisition speed. He continued studying her even after we left. He became obsessed with understanding the source of her abilities. not for exploitation, but genuine scientific inquiry. His illness changed him. Layla produced a tablet showing Davidson's final project, a comprehensive educational methodology for teaching multiple languages simultaneously to young children, based on the techniques Nancy used with Emma. He called it the Rodriguez method, Layla continued. It's designed to be implementable by any parent, regardless of economic resources. He named it after me. His notes indicate he came to believe the crucial element in Emma's development wasn't genetic predisposition or even your linguistic expertise. It was the emotional connection between you, the love and security that created optimal learning conditions. Layla and Sophia had been working to transform what remained of the program, preserving educational excellence while eliminating family separation. Davidson's research provided scientific foundation for their reforms. We want your participation, Ms. Rodriguez. Your expertise, your experience. We've identified another child with linguistic abilities similar to Emma's. Instead of separating him from his family, we want to implement the Rodriguez method with the family as primary facilitators. That evening, Nancy discussed the developments with Emma. To her surprise, Emma had researched Davidson herself the previous year. Mr. Davidson realized you were right all along, Emma observed, that separating kids from their parents was wrong. It seems so, yes. Then you should help them, Mama. If it helps other kids like that boy, or like Priya when those people tried to recruit her. You knew about Priya. She told me her parents almost sent her to a special school, but changed their minds after meeting Emma's mom. Emma smiled. I figured it out eventually. That's why we moved to London, isn't it? Because someone wanted to separate us. Nancy looked at her daughter, confident, balanced, compassionate despite her extraordinary abilities, and felt a wave of gratitude. Davidson had seen Emma's languages as assets to be developed. Nancy had seen them as bridges to understanding. Both perspectives held truth, but only one had preserved what mattered most, the connection between mother and daughter that had proven more powerful than any billionaire's influence. We've got options, Nancy agreed, smiling, and we'll face them together, just like always.